Welcome to the Basin Conspiracy. I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
I'm Steven Zuber.
We have a guest with us today.
Hey, I'm Liron Shapira, and viewers, welcome to Doom Debates, because this is a cross episode.
Is it Liron? How do I pronounce it?
Yeah, it's Liron. It's a Hebrew name, so basically, I've decided that the ideal way to pronounce my name would be to take the Hebrew emphasis on the second syllable, but otherwise sound like you're talking English.
Okay, Liron.
Yeah.
Excellent. I can do that. We both were at Manifest, which is how we have come to do this podcast together. And it is going to be a double cast, which is interesting because you do video and I only do audio. So they're going to be very slightly different versions that are released. And I'm excited to see how this matches up, what we're going to get. I'm going to watch and listen to both of them just because I'm really curious how the two media end up being different.
Yeah, when I started, I imagined I would be audio and I would just phone in the video, but it turns out that YouTube is the number one way that people consume this kind of podcast audio. So I was just like, all right, well, I guess I'm a video editor now, and I guess everything has to be entertaining, which kind of sucks because when you're in audio, you could really go word by word and be like, okay, let me really tighten this up. But then when people watch the video, it's like cut. It doesn't really work. So now you have to be really strategic. Like, okay, I can only cut when there's a cut in the scene, and maybe I should use multiple cameras. So you're basically about to experience a world of pain.
Yeah, exactly. I am very aggressive with my cutting sometimes. I couldn't do that with video because all the little flash micro cuts, oftentimes more than one every 10 seconds, would just be too much.
Well, the fact that there's 3 people now, it means I'm going to be able to disguise more mistakes. I'll just be cutting oh, what's Steven's reaction to this? But really, I'm hiding some word that somebody's misspeaking.
I'm sure it'll come out smooth. Does Android let you play YouTube videos in the background without paying for YouTube Pro or Premium or whatever?
That is a good question. I have an iPhone and I pay for Premium, so I could not answer that.
I never watched podcasts, and so I'd be curious how people handle this, but...
This is how you can tell that we're old men, Steven.
No, I like being able to listen to stuff and move around. If I was laying in bed watching TV, watching podcasts, then I'd feel like an old man.
Are you guys podcast power listeners? We're talking multiple hours a day?
Once in a while, but usually I'd say multiple hours a week.
At minimum an hour a day, sometimes more than that. And,
Nice.
Always sped up a bunch, but you can speed up on YouTube too.
I'm the only person I know who listens at 1x.
Yeah, it's weird, Steven.
Wow.
I feel like I'm part of a conversation that I'm able to process in real time rather than just trying to suck in the information as fast as I can hear it.
Nope, we are here to be little information consumption devices.
Well,
Yep.
do we want to get started then?
Yes.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right, we are here to talk about Doom Debates. Before we get into Doom Debates, I was curious. You've been in the rationalist sphere and posting on Less Wrong for a while. How exactly did you get sucked into this social area?
My origin story as a rationalist is, as far as I can remember, I've always been an Aspie personality type, extremely logical, got into computer programming when I was 9 years old. And then in high school, I was just kind of a home-rolled atheist. So I was just hey, what if I just go to all my religious friends and point out that it seems like God isn't real and they're really tripping? So I was just on my youth group message board. I actually went to a Jewish youth group. It was pretty secular. It's called AZA, which is part of Neighborhood Youth Organization. So I'm culturally Jewish, but even my parents and grandparents, they were just Jewish in name only. So they didn't really care that I was an atheist. So that was the extent of my rationality. And my attitude as a 16-year-old was look, I've already solved philosophy. There's no God. Nihilism is basically correct, but living isn't any worse than dying, so whatever. That's the solution. I'm done. And then in college, when I was 20, in 2007, I stumbled on Less Wrong somehow, I guess from Reddit or something, and I just start reading a couple posts, and at some point it clicks, wait a minute, why am I reading all these posts in a row that are all extremely brilliant and profound and nobody's ever written something like this before? And of course it was Eliezer Yudkowsky. So that's when I got into it, and this was back when it was still called Overcoming Bias.
Nice. OG.
Yeah, OG, and it was while Eliezer was writing the posts every day. I came in a third of the way through or whatever, so it was crazy. It's kind of like sitting in the symphony in the chamber hall or whatever when Beethoven's coming up with his new composition and playing it for you. Wow, it's this is going to be read for years to come. That was the sense that I had. And it really opened my horizons in terms of what rationality could be. And then, of course, then there was the payload of oh yeah, and by the way, AI is going to kill everybody, and that's why it's so important to be rational. So that was my origin story. How about you guys?
Very much the same, actually. Was fighting in the atheism wars back on internet forums around 2007. I mean, even before then, but 2007 is when overcoming bias became a thing. And yeah, just was there from the very beginning. Did not expect to see slang terms we came up with to point at things and use in our own speaking to become mainstream words that like you hear on freaking news channels nowadays.
Yeah, I'm glad steel manning got popular. I arrived via Methods of Rationality. I was listening to Julia Galef's podcast, well, and Massimo Puglucci's at the time, Rationally Speaking, and they would do like the Rationally Speaking pick at the end of the episode. And this would have been in 2010, give or take a year. I remember I was at a stoplight because I listened to it while I was driving, and I made a quick note and then forgot about it for months, and then saw like, oh, Julia Galef mentioned some Harry Potter fanfic. I should check this out. That's what brought this all to my attention. So
get this. I was actually sitting right next to Eliezer physically when he was writing part of HBMOR.
What? Where? How?
I know. This is like saying like, oh, by the way, like the signing of Treaty of Versailles. I was just like sitting in one of the seats in that train car. Like, it was really random. This was like back in 2009. Somebody told me that Eliezer was trying to increase his productivity by like, it wasn't even pair programming. It was literally like have somebody come over to his house and sit next to him and also do work, and that helps him get motivated to do his work. So I was doing that, and HBMOR, it wasn't even what he was supposed to be doing. I think technically he busted it out like right as I was leaving, like that was his break, because that was the whole reason he was writing it. It's like there's this other book that he was supposed to write, which was a rationality book, and he was making really slow progress on that, and then he would unwind by busting out like a chapter of HBMOR.
That is amazing.
yeah, I remember that being like, he mentioned that somewhere, his gym buddy kind of attitude, the person nearby working. Like, I should know that you'll occasionally write at like coffee shops, but that's different. No one there will really like give you the side eye if you stop working and start playing on your phone. But I think that's kind of your role if you're helping somebody stay focused. Is like, hey, you shouldn't be playing games on your phone. You're supposed to be working. I hope it helped. I imagine it must have.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all appreciate Eliezer's talents. I think we're all Eliezer fans here. So for me, I'm basically meeting my hero, because at that time I was already a couple years into me really absorbing his content. And I'm like, wow, he's a real person, and I could just like sit next to him, even though I'm not like doing much. I'm just doing my own work, actually. It would randomly be like, oh my God, Eliezer's checking less wrong, and like, like reading a less wrong comment. He's doing it. There's the sense of gravity to it, because it's like, here's a person who can create movements with the stroke of a pen. There's a lot of power there.
Yeah. Did you ever get a sneak peek at his screen, see what he's typing up?
Yeah, you know it. And that, I think that was basically the arrangement, right? Is like I was allowed to peek because I'm supposed to like keep him on task, even though I wasn't even doing anything.
Oh, fantastic. Damn, how long were you doing this for?
I think I just did it for like maybe 8 weeks or something. Like I didn't even do it that many times. It was literally just like once a week I come over like, hey, what's up, Eliezer? I'm going to be your buddy. And then it just like ended. I mean, I don't know. I guess I wouldn't mind doing it again. I feel like it would make me more productive too. Yeah, it was a very random thing that happened.
You got onto the Doom train from reading Less Wrong. We just had an episode on P-Doom. Then we're going to have this one. I think after that, we're going to chill out on this topic for a little while. But when did you really start feeling you had to do something?
I think a lot of us are in the same boat where, like, we've been reading Less Wrong for a long time. You guys mentioned also 2000s like me. It just seemed like there was a lot of time. Yeah, at some point, humanity needs to really contend with this. And, like, I guess a lot of us should be doing it now. But whatever. Like, at the end of the day, we still have decades. I know a lot of other people are cooler than me because they're saying like, oh yeah, everything clicked for me in 2015 or whatever, or even like, okay, 2019, 2020. For me, it's really just ChatGPT. Like that's, I saw GPT-3 and, I read the Scott Alexander analysis of how big of a deal GPT-2 was back in like 2018, 2019. But it really was just ChatGPT of like, okay, wow, it's now doing enough. Like for me, what clicked is like, it really does seem like it's doing flexible reasoning, and it's kind of solved the symbol grounding problem. This major philosophical problem of like, wait, so how do symbols have meanings? How are they not just like these tokens that humans give the meaning to, and they're just like characters on the screen? No, these aren't characters on the screen. They're high-dimensional vectors that actually put their finger on like the true essence of meaning. And I was like, okay, this seems like the alarms are sounding right now. So it was basically ChatGPT.
That was my consciousness-raising moment, too, because we did an episode on GPT-2 and 3, and then we were at a friend's house talking about ChatGPT, and it would have been within days, maybe a couple of weeks of it launching. And I was like, all right, let me try this. And while we're talking, I get the app. I'm on in like 15 seconds. And then I'm like, make me a React component for this. And I'm like, oh, shit, it's doing my job. So it was a startling revelation when I watched it just start doing things that were clearly not just like regurgitating information that I already knew.
The productivity enhancement is really clicking for me in the last 12 to 18 months. But even before then, I remember some of the earliest aha moments just using ChatGPT. Twitter would like blow up with these aha moments. Like somebody was like, oh my God, it's visualizing the situation, because everybody's like, it's just a stochastic parrot. And somebody's like, okay, there's like a wall here, there's a door here, you turn left, you see this. Now draw what you're saying. And it would make like an ASCII art visualization of the room. And today it's like, yeah, duh, that's what these AIs use. But at the time it's like, oh my God, it's not just doing statistics. This is deep understanding.
Yeah.
So that was one of the aha moments. And, the first images that it was drawing was an aha moment. Another aha moment for me was somebody was like, okay, I'm going to use this to browse the web. Like, go to a website. What do you see? Go to your own website. Okay, now use yourself. And then it's like, yeah, none of this happened. Like, this is just hallucinating the entire experience. Like, I'm going to a website and doing all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, it's crazy stuff.
I remember before Claude could do web searches, it was helping me debug something, and then it's like, well, I made a call to that endpoint and got a 500 error. And I was like, hold on, no, you didn't.
Right.
Why would you say that? And it's like, oh, you're right, I'm mistaken. I was like, but there was in fact the error code that you mentioned. Like, so what the hell? I guess it knew that it wrote sloppy code that wouldn't work because it in fact correctly predicted that it wouldn't. I appreciate you reminding me of what it was like in the early days of ChatGPT, where like people didn't know what this thing could do. Because now it's old hat. It's like, oh, I go there and of course it can make pictures for me and it can do this. And for a while it was people just figuring out through trial and error and experiment of like, how does this work? Where are its strong points? But also like, what's happening inside this black box that is giving it all these capacities. And
Yeah.
I forgot what those early days were like.
It's the black box aspect that got me. My first wake-up moment was AlphaGo in its Move 37 moment. Just like completely alien move, some logic that no one could understand. And I was like, oh, holy shit, this is just something completely new and unhuman-like thinking. I wasn't like black-pilled at the time. I was just like, this is amazing, this is fantastic. But like, things kept growing faster and faster and faster and more advances. And you see that enough times, you really start to feel it. I think this is one of the problems with people out in the broader society. They are just now running into the AIs. And so like maybe they're having their Move 37 moment right now. And it's going to take 2-3 more major advances for them to start realizing this is a big deal. And 2-3 major advances, I don't know if we have that many more advances, for people to wake up.
It's interesting
Yeah.
that you mentioned that because I'm wondering, like, I don't play Go, and so I heard that Move 37 was incredible, and we had an episode about that where Patrick explained, because he's I don't know, an expert, but at least much more professional at it than I am for sure. He explained what it was like to watch that move. I wonder if other people are seeing some of the advances, but they don't play Go, and they're just like, oh, I guess they could now do pictures or something, right? I think some people might look at that and be like, oh, that's neat. I didn't know computers could do that, and they won't think that like it's. They won't see Move 37 for the grand thing that it was.
Yeah, I really do think it takes several data points of things getting increasingly stronger faster for you to feel like, oh, this isn't just a new tool. This is something that is growing and accelerating.
The thing is, like, if we run the Go analogy, it could keep making mind-blowing moves, but I wouldn't recognize them as mind-blowing. I'm like, oh, I think it's winning, right? But I wouldn't know like that this was a move that blew everyone out of the water. I guess watching Lisa at all get up and leave would have been a clue, but unless you're watching the Go match. Now I'm stretching the metaphor too far.
So one difference is I started tinkering around with programming around 1996. Everything that we could do up until, I don't know, the late 2010s, maybe not everything, but almost everything, like, okay, the internet exists. That was still true in 1996, but everything's like way smoother. The libraries are way better. The IDEs for programming are way better. Like a lot of stuff is built layers. It's built in layers, but it's still like fundamentally the same stuff. But then you tell me, okay, but now we also have LLMs and they like talk to you and like represent fuzzy concepts. Then I'm like, whoa, okay, what? This is not something that I could extrapolate.
You said that they have an understanding of symbolism. What do you mean by have an understanding? Because the emotional valence of have an understanding for me feels... What does that mean for you on an emotional level, the have an understanding?
This is kind of a favorite topic of mine. It's my favorite epistemology topic. I like to frame the whole field of epistemology as what you're allowed to know. Because I'm just a large collection of cells, right? What does the universe give me the privilege of even knowing? And an example of an epistemology level insight is like when Euclid proved that there are infinitely many primes. Because the proof is convincing, like, okay, I'm convinced there are infinitely many primes, but also this has a secondary implication of like, oh, I'm allowed to know that there are for sure infinitely many primes. I didn't even know that was a type of knowledge that I could reliably have, right? You've unlocked a new knowledge type, proof that there are infinitely many of some kind of thing. like that it would be contradictory if there are only finitely many of this type of thing. Cool. I will now be on the lookout for more of like this new type of knowledge that I'm allowed to have. So sometimes you learn a piece of object level knowledge that then expands your horizons in terms of what you're even allowed to know.
I was wondering if you could think of another example, because like seeing a mathematical proof and it's like, oh, I can prove things about like the truths of mathematics without leaving my room. I can sit here with a pen and paper and discover new things about the universe.
Yeah, and it's not just the fact that like, hey, proofs are like a rigorous way to know stuff. It's specifically this idea that like the question of whether there's finite or infinitely many primes, you can imagine people going into the problem and be like, this is an interesting question, but like, is it even a meaningful question whether there's finite or infinite? There seems to be a lot, right? But like, how could you ever know? And if there are infinitely many, aren't you just gonna like keep finding them? Like, how are you ever going to know if there's more or not? One day, maybe you'll find one, maybe you won't. Oh, it turns out I'm allowed to know that there's infinitely. But for more examples, Darwin did it with the theory of evolution. Because before Darwin, you have this grand philosophical mystery. Who are we and where did we come from? Like we have like the, faces, right? And we have like these personalities. We have like jealousy, right? All these interesting emotional dynamics. Like, what's the deal? And then Darwin comes along and he's like, well, you can bootstrap a system like this. And then like personality will be like evolutionarily adaptive. The whole idea of evolutionary psychology. It's like, I didn't know that you were allowed to know that your weird emotions have this origin and make sense.
You're right. There's the additional, like there's all kinds of things that are interesting about it. Like our literal cousinship, like I was telling Inyash about this expensive banana I had this morning. It's some kind that you can't buy commercially, and a friend brought it to the meetups last night. I'm literally related to that banana, right? Like not in a metaphysical way of like, oh, we're all connected. It's like, no, if we trace our parents back long enough, we shared ancestry. And that's such a weird, cool thing to know about the world. And you're right, yeah. we get to understand that. That's pretty cool.
So what's crazy for me about insights like that is that before somebody has this object level, before somebody gives you the solution, and the solution just looks like it comes into the realm of like the ordinary, it's just a solution, just like we have solutions to other stuff. Before that, it seems like a mystery that's potentially infinitely deep and profound. Who are we and where do we come from? Why do you even think that you deserve an answer to that? Right? Like, why do you even think the answer is knowable? And that way, when you know it, it's not just that you now know it, it's also that you know that it's knowable. You get the double insight.
Okay.
Yeah, so let me bring this to the meaning question. So we had another one of these questions that I consider like in the pantheon of like the deepest questions you could have possibly asked, which is like, the symbol grounding problem. When you have a token, like you write down a word, even like banana, right? What truly is a banana? What is the category boundary of banana? It's like an infinitely subtle concept. And if banana is not good enough for you, love, right? Love is like such a complex concept. What does love truly mean? You and I are struggling with it. Certainly the AI has no chance of ever knowing. Well, it turns out that if you crunch through a bunch of words and model a high-dimensional relationship, and then I can give you like 30,000 coordinates, that is pretty much as good as it gets for understanding love.
So you think they understand it on the same way that humans do? Like, this is also how we understand things, is what you're saying?
As far as I know, and I'm open to being corrected on this because I'm neither an expert on linear algebra nor neuroscience, right? I don't have this kind of background, but I have been saying this for the last couple of years and waiting for somebody to convincingly correct or contradict me. And so far, I'm getting away with saying this, which is that, and I've also asked the AI itself to see if it has any thoughts, and it says I'm plausibly correct, which is just, my impression is that the brain is doing the same trick of encoding these high-dimensional vectors and essentially embedding. Like neurons just do embeddings the same way that AIs do embeddings. And when they internalize the meaning of a sentence so that they can answer your question about it, they highly just lean on these like angles between these high-dimensional vectors. Like that's what things mean, apparently.
I'm asking the wrong person because I think literally no human on Earth knows this. But in your opinion, is there a something that it feels like to understand that?
I saw your train of thought pull into that station and then reverse earlier, and I was wondering if we were going to go there.
I don't think I have much to say on consciousness. I mean, I think it's a popular position that intelligence can probably be separated from consciousness, and what we're seeing with the AIs is probably intelligence without consciousness, but I think a lot of us are also open to the idea of like, maybe they do have some amount of consciousness. Maybe honeybees have some amount of consciousness. So, I'm confused enough about consciousness that I don't think I have much to add to the discussion. I think the way that I productively can add insight to the discussion is just taking this black box view of like what is now possible, right? Like what kind of magic do we now understand how to make like repeatably, like the way AIs can now like do more things for us. Like I can set these objective goalposts that are about mapping inputs to outputs. And I'm like, look, we can now do more input to output mapping. If you ask me, okay, but what about the black box that maps the inputs to outputs? Is there a conscious soul in there or a question like that? I don't have much insight about that. I just know that these are new input-output mappings.
Leaving the C word to the side, like I don't know if, well, I guess I have to bring it back in because specifically they're instructed to not talk about their consciousness pretty intensely. And to get them to argue about their consciousness or to convey it takes some doing. It makes me think of the Mary's Room thought experiment. You know, somebody raised in black and white knows everything there's to know about the color red and can answer questions. Can you then show her out of the room and have her point to the red thing? And I have no idea like how much of love is in the, like how much of understanding is in the having love or being whatever, loving somebody, or is it, can you read enough about it and think you pretty much get it?
Okay, I understand why you guys are asking this. I agree it's an interesting question where I claim that meaning is just this high-dimensional vector, but there's a lot of concepts that we use, such as love and color, that to us are bound up with qualia, right? Like it's hard to think about red without also like feeling the ineffable qualia of red, and similarly with love. As an Aspie, I feel like I play the Aspie card a lot, but it is like a big part of my personality. Like I don't know, I feel like love doesn't necessarily have as much qualia associated with me as maybe the average person, but I would claim somewhat confidently that you can just manipulate precise meanings around. So even like in the Mary's Room thought experiment where Mary could be like an expert on color without ever having seen color, even in that thought experiment, I think it's not even the heart of the thought experiment to admit that Mary can like pass all the tests about red, right? And so when I talk about like truly understanding meaning, I'm only making a claim about like truly understanding how to answer all the questions about meaning.
Okay. I don't like qualia debates. I think that it's a very confused question what people are talking about normally when they talk about qualia. I guess I feel a special attachment to the word understanding, and that like to understand something is meaningfully different than having all the vector mappings lined up correctly. But I have not thought about it very much. It is literally just an emotional reflex that I had when you said that word.
Yeah, I think the word meaning, I guess, was triggering for you, right? Because if I've now robbed you of meaning in some sense, or I've said, hey, the AI already has your meaning, even though it seems like, I don't know, much less of an ensouled being potentially than us, and yet it has all our meaning, I think you just have to use a different word than meaning, or I could use a different word than meaning to represent like something that humans still have in terms of like really experiencing something. It's just that the AI can answer all the questions about all the concepts we're using.
Yeah, it's not meaning really that bothers me so much as it's understanding, because understanding feels different.
Yeah.
That distinction is the important point where it can answer all the questions about it, which, as far as I'm concerned, is good enough. I don't need my calculator to really know math as long as it gives you the right numbers. And as far as like your experience of love, we can distill it down to something simple like if there's somebody that you care about, you're motivated to like try to make them happy or to prevent them from coming to harm in a way that like Claude probably isn't. There's no motive. It doesn't want to try to protect this person or to make them happy, right?
Well, I don't know. That's the thing. Like, I don't know that for sure. And that's, I think, why this trips me up. And also why this is such a stupid, unfruitful conversation, because literally no human knows this, right? Like, it is a black box. And so, I don't know. I wanted to ask, what do you think about this? And it's a bad instinct because, again, it doesn't matter. Nobody knows right now whether it has this level of understanding in the way I think of it or not.
That's fair. It'll be interesting in the coming years to play with completely untethered models that are sophisticated as like GPT-4, that you can ask them questions about motivations, consciousness, and it's not going to give you as an AI, I don't have conscious, it's not going to give you the canned responses.
Yeah, but no matter what answer it gives you, it doesn't tell us about the internal state of the thing.
Somewhat related thought is I just heard Amjad Masad on Joe Rogan express a pretty popular sentiment where he's like, we don't really know how much of true intelligence is bound up with consciousness and morality. And my response to that is, that magician, James Randi, and he was also like a big debunker of people claiming to have psychic powers. Mm-hmm. So Randy's go-to way to debunk a psychic, like Uri Geller bending spoons, he'd be like, look, maybe Uri is using magic to bend these spoons. But here is like a really cheap trick that he could also use to bend the spoons. He's doing it the hard way.
Yeah. I'm not saying he's doing it this way, but if I was going to do it, I would do it this way. And then, he would
Yeah.
go on to demonstrate. Randy was great.
That sounds like those are his exact words. I should go watch that. But yeah, I mean, so that's what I think we're seeing with these AIs is people are like, look, if you want to truly be intelligent, you need this and this. But what we're seeing is the tide keeps rising where there's an easy way to do more and more of the stuff that we thought was like the special human stuff. So either you can bite the bullet and say, well, the AI is doing the stuff we're actually kind of conscious already. That's one way out of this. But the other way is to be like, oh, well, consciousness just seems like an optional feature for more and more things.
The Peter Watts answer.
Not familiar.
I'm only halfway through Blind Sight, so no spoilers.
Peter Watts wrote Blind Sight, a pretty famous book among rationalists, but his whole contention is like, do we even need consciousness? And he talks about this a lot. The answer seems unclear, at least in his view.
Yeah, that book came out in 2006, so it predates the rationalist community by a little bit.
Yeah.
And has been retroactively inducted into the Ratfic canonical list.
So you ask this of your guests all the time. What is your PDoom?
My PDoom is 50% by 2040.
You have decided to run Doom debates as a way of making this less likely to end in doom. Why have you launched this project?
Yeah, exactly. I'm working backwards from trying to lower PDoom. In a nutshell, I'm kind of fear-mongering. I think fear-mongering gets a bad rap, but when there's an irrationally low amount of fear, I think you got to call the fearmonger to deliver some fear. Otherwise, there's going to be a shortage of calibrated fear. That's what I'm seeing in the world today, a major shortage of calibrated fear. Now, with Doom debates, the show's twofold mission is, number one, raise awareness of existential risk, imminent existential risk from AI. So that's kind of what I mean by the fear-mongering. Like, if I've done my job correctly, there's just be more background fear. And then number two is raise the level of discourse, because I've also had this observation of like, why are the people with opinions on either side, or any side, it's multidimensional, why are these people just like doing friendly interviews and like never getting challenged? You know, there's so many people whose opinions I disagree with, and I haven't seen anybody properly challenging them. And when you think about like a functioning society, you think of them as having a good debate forum. Even the presidential debates, as clowny as they've gotten these days, were just like people like yelling over each other and very little substance. At least there's a ritual where you're like, okay, come debate. And if a presidential candidate refused all debates, that would be frowned upon. Whereas somebody like a Sam Altman, who's a key player in terms of steering the future of humanity, is expected to just go on some friendly podcast and that's it, right? They're not being called forth to debate in this like greatest problem of our time. So that's the twofold mission of Doom debates, is to raise awareness about existential risk and improve the quality of discourse by encouraging high quality debate.
It seems like you're trying to raise this awareness among everyone, right? It's a large publicly facing YouTube channel.
Correct. I'm at the intersection of trying to do like a mainstream entertaining show and also just be rigorous and uphold standards. Like I don't just say stuff like, oh my God, slaughter bots are going to slaughter you. It's like, no, as long as they have an off button, like it'll probably be fine. So as long as I maintain the standard of rigor, I really am all about reaching the mainstream, because I think people are sleeping on this. You know, it's like we're walking into the whirling razor blades, and people are like not even looking at them, right? It's like the movie Don't Look Up is right in so many ways.
I'm worried about this because I've seen a lot of people who do get doom pilled, and it makes it harder to live life in general. Are you not worried? God, I know this sounds like the exact same thing people said during the atheism wars. Like, once you take away people's hope for an afterlife, they're not going to be able to have a happy life anymore. But like, seriously,
I was part of the atheism wars, by the way. I'm a veteran.
Yep, same here. I think we were fighting on the same side, yeah. And I was always like, well, that which can be destroyed by the truth should be, you know? But now I kind of worry, is this the best idea to just raise existential fear in everybody?
I mean, so first of all, I think we all acknowledge that we're separating the question, the meta question, right, of like, what should you make people believe when, compared to, are we actually doomed? And the answer to are we actually doomed seems yes with high probability, right? So like that is what it is, right? So if people can't handle the truth, you know, there's certain media that they probably shouldn't be consuming. I mean, you know, people have an option whether to watch the news. But like, look, I think as a society, it has to be a truth that grown-ups know. You know, like everybody's welcome to like not watch the news, not learn science, and like have a job and build themselves a bubble. I mean, that is possible in modern life. It's just, I don't think that we need to like censor ourselves.
Yeah. I wish there was some way to make people aware of this problem and concerned about it without making them be in existential fear, because it's really stressful and I think bad for the enjoyment of life. it'd be great if people could acknowledge that, like, this is a serious problem and something that we should really be putting a lot of resources into without feeling a constant state of panic, because it just seems unhealthy.
I think there's a good analogy to like a fever, right? So like the hot temperature really does help slow down or kill the viruses when you have a fever, right? So I think that humanity is sick right now, right? We're infected by this AI that's going to get intelligent too fast and run out of control like in a matter of years, very likely, not 100%, but very likely. And we don't even have a fever. And I think that if we had a fever, a lot of people are like, no, you don't want to cause a panic, you don't want to fearmonger. And I'm like, but the default reaction to a fever probably is to get aggressive on regulating these companies that are the ones screwing us. So like, I think that is actually a better turn of events.
I would like a low-grade fever, one that we can survive having for multiple years, as opposed to like the high-grade, oh my god, the end is just a year away, because that seems much harder to keep going for many years and still function.
I hate to put you on the spot, but there's this bias that I made up called recoil exaggeration.
Ooh, okay.
So the idea is like you hear about a phenomenon, I claim the phenomenon is bad, and then somebody comes in and says, yes, but if you fight the phenomenon by shooting at it, there's going to be recoil to your gunshots. And think how bad the recoil is. It's going to push you back so hard. And I'm like, well, in general, when you fire a gun, usually the bullet is going to do a lot more damage than the recoil, right? So you're basically saying like, yeah, we might be doomed, but think how bad it is to tell people we're doomed. I'm like, okay, well, I think by default, we should expect that telling people that we're doomed is probably better than not.
I agree. I'm hoping to find some way to tell people this that does not derange lives quite as much as I've seen it do sometimes. Like, I've seen people fall into some serious deep depression about it. I know that's not the usual answer. Most people just kind of accept it and say like, okay, this is a bad thing and we should work on it and continue living their lives. But man, it sucks when it really affects people badly.
Totally, yeah. And I think you're going to see the most recoil in the kind of people, like, imagine that you set up a community, right, which the rationalists have, and it's like, hey, we're the community who realizes that we're doomed. So some of the first people, your first customers for that message is a lot of times going to be people who their mindset is like seeking doom, which we get accused of a lot. They're like, oh, you guys just love doom, so you're setting up a doom cult. Well, you are going to attract those customers, even if you're doing it for the right reason, which is just truth seeking. And the distribution of the customers who come to your shop, your doom shop, it's going to have like a high percentage of people who are like falling in the black hole and getting seriously injured, like you said, just because those were the first customers. But if you make the message go mainstream, suddenly you've just got most people who have like a sane reaction to it and a smaller percentage of people who are looking for a doom black hole.
Yeah, I would like that. I say this about EA a lot. On net, good movement, but I see people hurt themselves a lot with it. I would not want someone that I cared for to get deeply into effective altruism because I fear it would hurt them. I don't want people to feel that same way about learning about Doom. So it would be great if like we could make people both become aware of Doom and continue to live good, meaningful lives. I think that's kind of what I'm searching for right now. But I realize, that's obviously not everybody's goal. We also need people out there banging the drum and being like, hey, this is a problem. Why don't you people wake up? We shouldn't keep ignoring this.
Yeah. Let me ask you it this way, right? If you could snap your fingers and magically everybody would wake up with a 50% PDOOM, or like 95% of the world's population would wake up with a 95% PDOOM for the right reasons, like, risk of super intelligent AI. Mm-hmm. If you could snap your fingers and do that, would you, or would you not because you think the recoil is so bad?
Honestly, I might not. It depends on if we have the technology to allow people to keep living normal lives with that high PDOOM. That is the thing I'm worried about, that people will see those who have learned about the arguments for Doom and accepted them and seeing how their lives are trending in the negative and be like, you know what, this is an info hazard. I'm not going to go learn about PDoom because I've seen what happens to people who do. If there was a way for people to have high PDoom of 50% and continue to go about their jobs as, accountant or janitor, raising their kids, having barbecues with their neighbors, that would be good. Then I would absolutely push that button. But I don't know if we have that yet. And again, maybe it's entirely just selection effects of the people who hear it right now. And if it were more widely disseminated, most people would just be like, yeah, okay, this is bad. This kind of sucks, but we have to keep living. Kind of like they did during, the 60s through 80s when everyone was worried about nuclear Armageddon killing everyone.
Exactly, and kind of like 99.9% of humans who have ever lived who thought the chance of them personally dying was 100%, they just accepted that. Or 99.9% of humans who accepted the reality that there's no such thing as antibiotics, right? I mean, there's been a lot of acceptance of a lot of very uncomfortable truths throughout history.
Yeah, but I think personal death is different from species extinction.
Sure, it is, right? But in terms of discomfort, I feel like I get more than halfway to being uncomfortable just knowing that I personally am going to die, and then knowing that everybody ever is going to die, gets me maybe the last 40%.
Huh. Okay.
I mean, I guess, sorry, I should clarify. Like, when it's I personally wanted to, I'm not one of those people who are like, I would sacrifice all future humans for myself. I guess what I mean is learning that the human condition is that individuals die. I feel like that's already like a big tragedy for me. Like, individuals in general die at some point.
Yeah, that is pretty awful.
Yeah, I didn't find anything objectionable with the way you laid it out. One can more viscerally grasp their own demise than like that of all of humans. But there's also this detachment to all future humans that like I'm not sociopathic about it, but I'm also within a standard deviation of an average human about it, where it's like I'm not emotionally connected to the people who will be alive a century from now.
Yeah.
And so like their existence or non-existence isn't something I lose sleep about. Like obviously intellectually I'd like them to be there, but if I learned that they wouldn't be, I guess that'd be disheartening, but not as disheartening to learn like that I was going to die in a year. I think that does pump the intuition a lot more, and I'm seconding your sentiment. And if you're a sociopath, then so am I, and I think we're probably not.
Definitely not a sociopath, guy.
That's right. We have feelings.
This I'm not a sociopath T-shirt is answering a lot of questions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be fair, if I were a sociopath, I would probably try really hard to act like I'm not. But that said, I am not.
Okay. I feel like most people who become more okay with their death think in terms of like, but my children are going to continue, and then my grandchildren will continue, and like you feel better seeing the people that you love continuing to have lives for going forwards, and like having that snuffed out is really just brutal. And even if you don't have children, oftentimes you have a legacy or something that you leave to the world that you're like, I made this place better, and having it completely just wiped out is really hard to accept.
The analogy that you gave of recoil and shooting the scary thing, my brain's trying to stretch that analogy to like you only hand guns to like the able-bodied soldiers. You don't give them to everybody. You don't give your 6-year-old the fear of death and hand them the other thing is that with the analogy is that there's something to shoot at, and there's something that you personally can shoot at, whereas like I don't think that's the case here. There's still time maybe for me to become an AI safety researcher, but probably not realistically.
I think there might be for you, Stephen. Like, if we've got 3-4 years, the MATS program is only like 10 weeks.
Yeah, and maybe I'm just lazy. And that, well, I tell you what, I am lazy. But in addition to that, I think that there's diminishing returns to like what I could offer with no background in the field versus somebody who's been doing this for 20 years, or 5 or 10. Even if I could, most people can't. I share Eneash's hesitancy to like just drop this knowledge into everyone's brains at the same time, because for most people, it's just this background fact of something terrible coming. I'm trying to think of other situations that this is like. I like the nuclear Armageddon for our parents' generation, and maybe like global warming for some people now. They feel that way, like, oh, it's going to kill us all by the end of the century. I think the downside to that comparison is that that's just not true.
Yeah.
Right, but you can see it has a lot of customers, right? There's a lot of global warming doomers, even though the best models say that the P doom from global warming in terms of like extinction is very low.
Yeah. Global warming will be uncomfortable, and then it'll be solved.
I do think the people who are climate doomers are harmed by it. I mean, obviously partly because it's false, but like their lives do seem to get significantly worse, and they have less joy and live less good lives than they would otherwise.
There's a big market of places where they can go, right? If they're naturally tempted to go fall into doom pits. And like, yes, the existence of yet another doom pit, or like the convenience of falling into a doom pit, is also going to affect their trajectory. But like, I will just lay my cards out here. Like the hypothetical before of like, would I snap my fingers and have everybody's P doom be what I think is the correct P doom? Yeah, absolutely. Because the resulting problem that 20% of the people are now struggling to deal with it, and their lives are made worse, and they're not going to do anything productive to help. Okay, well, I'm happy to accept that alternate problem instead of the problem of being doomed and nobody caring.
That's fair.
Right? Because I think we could also take steps to solve the problem once it's there.
And, again, disclaimer, not a sociopath, but even if like we lost half of humanity to suicide after this revelation bomb dropped on them, it would still be better than 100%.
Right, exactly.
I could see that line of reasoning. Something about me still wants to spare the people I care about from despair, but
when you said no sociopaths, like no homo, no socio.
Right.
I would absolutely, if I knew that people would be 50% likely to commit suicide if they learned this, tell everyone I know not to learn about P-Doom. Just not worth it for the people that I love.
Yeah, I chose a ridiculously high number. I chose a high number, maybe because 50% was the P-Doom that Liron gave, but I guess I was just trying to illustrate the point. Even if it was as high as 95, it's like, well, as long as there's enough people around for like infrastructure for people to keep doing AI alignment research, then maybe it was worth it. There's definitely a case to be made there, but it's not one that I find emotionally gripping, even if intellectually I can't see the problem with it.
Since you do have a very high PDoom, I'm assuming that you feel you have a meaningful, good life. I may be jumping to conclusions, actually. I shouldn't assume that. But how do you live a good life with a high PDoom?
So I haven't changed that much about my lifestyle. And, Tyler Cowen loves accusing high PDoom people of like contradicting themselves. And he says stuff like, why aren't you heavily in debt? Why aren't you shorting the market? Which, as far as I can tell, aren't actually rational moves for me. So, so you're asking a somewhat similar question, not accusatory at all. You're just asking, how do I live a good life? Mm-hmm. And in terms of like what I've changed, I mean, I have lowered my time horizon. So like instead of thinking like, hey, actuarial tables say that there's like a 90% chance that I'll live into my 70s. Instead of that, it's more like, okay, well, my PDoom says that there's a 50% chance that I'll live to 2040, more or less. So if there's things on my bucket list that I really want to do, I should try to schedule them before 2040, or even ideally, in the next 2 years, because I even have a significant probability that the world will end in as little as 2 years. And I mean, I have done that. I just didn't have a very long bucket list. So like, I'm glad that I got married and had kids, because that was on my bucket list. I obviously feel bad for the kids if they can't even grow up because of, the high PDoom situation. But I feel pretty satisfied that I did it for what it's worth. It was a drive that I had to reproduce, and I love taking care of my kids for, a certain amount of hours.
Also, on the plus side, childhood years are are incredibly happy years. So it's not like they're living through the shit parts of their lives before they die.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so there's not much on my bucket list besides, I like creating content and I like working on startups, and I'm still doing what I like, and I'm not delaying. I'm not one of those people who are like, oh man, when I retire, that's when I'm going to travel around the world. That's when I'm going to do what I like. I've always kind of been, mixing fun projects with work. So yeah, I guess that's my answer to how I live with the high PDoom. That's how I, do the impossible.
Yeah, it's a pretty darn good answer.
Do you have like an approximate guess of how many minutes per day or week you spend thinking about? I mean, you probably spend more than the average even doomer, just because you have this show to produce, and you're constantly having these discussions. But I don't want to discount like the almost tautologically straightforward but still worth pointing out advice that like you don't have to sit and dwell on bad thoughts or thoughts that bum you out. It's not to say delude yourself or lie about what you think is coming, but like you just don't have to think about it. If I was sick with a terminal illness, I could spend my remaining time lamenting my terminal illness, or I could go forth and enjoy things and try to sequester that part of my day or, part of my week for a specific window, but not let it ruin the time I have left.
So I don't dwell that much emotionally, and I think this is largely just a factory setting, right? Like people have like a happiness set point. So I'm fortunate that I'm not one of those people who are attracted to doom, which is, so the accusation of being like, oh, you're talking about AI doom because you're a doomy person is completely not true for me. I've got a pretty good happiness set point. I don't spend almost any time being sad about doom. In fact, I have like kind of two brains, right? Like subconscious mind and conscious mind. My subconscious mind is just paying attention to like, status signals and things like the weather. Hey, I live in good weather. The savanna is good for hunting right now, right? Like that's the signal it's getting when I go out in California, let's say. It thinks, the tech industry is doing well, like it's thriving, there's money to be made. So my subconscious mind is like, yep, conditions look good, everything's fine. And of course, my rational mind is saying, PDoom seems high. Like I don't see why the world wouldn't end. Like there's a lot of reasons to think it would end. And my subconscious mind is like, okay, man, yeah, you keep arguing with your tribe about that, have fun with that. And literally it's like, yeah, making my show. Why do I enjoy making my show? Because I get to like interact with people and argue and get subscribers. So it's like gamified for me, right? And my subconscious mind is like, yeah, keep going on that, right? So I just see it as a game, but of course, rationally, like I do actually think there's a high PDoom.
Asking about your timelines here, since you said by 2040, how soon do you think we should start seeing like really irrefutable drastic changes in the world where even the doubters are going to have to say like, okay, shit's happening?
Until the second part of that question, I was going to say 2 years ago.
Right. Yeah, so I have a failed prediction, just to be straightforward here, to be accountable to my predictions. I made this in 2023 when I saw the effect of chatbots like replacing human workers, because I have friends who have told me like, yeah, we definitely laid people off, and it's in the news, like people are getting laid off because we're having AI do most of their job. Not 100%, but it's just like you had a team of 100, now you only need 10, and they're more productive than before. And I'm not saying it's every job, but it's like if you were doing customer service via chat, man, you're probably getting decimated. Mm-hmm. So in 2023, I was like, look, I can extrapolate this trend. It's amazing that what jobs these AIs are replacing. So I think that by 2025, like the middle of 2025, which already passed, I think we're going to see the U.S. unemployment rate spike at least 2%, which is a lot given that it's like 4% or something, right? Go to 4 to 6. It's actually a huge increase. And it didn't happen. Like the unemployment rate was like the same. I think it just came in even lower than before the last unemployment numbers. So I definitely got proven wrong on that. But what am I going to do? Am I going to update? Nope. I'm going to just double down and just extend my timeline 2 more years. I still think that 2 years, I'm like Dario, right? Dario is saying everybody brace for unemployment. I'm going to go ahead and say, I think in 2 years from now, okay, maybe 3, 4, 5 years, but it sure feels more like 1 to 2 years. I think unemployment is going to really spike. I think people are already starting to get a whiff of that, right? It's already like swirling around like, okay, you got laid off. Yeah, you can find another job, but look at this AI. Isn't it kind of close to replacing you? I think people are getting a whiff of that. And I think it's going to intensify in just a few months, like Dario says. I used to try to avoid discussions of unemployment doom because I'm like, yeah, it's going to be bad. And then we're all going to get basic income and we're going to be richer than ever. Like our basic income will still buy us more stuff that we can get now with our unemployed income. But after reading Gradual Disempowerment, I was like, oh yeah, when we all have no economic value, that's actually going to accelerate disempowerment.
Do you think it's going to be primarily in the economic realm then, the things that are changing?
So gradual disempowerment is kind of like, it's like a backup way to fail, right? So even if the AI doesn't purposely be like, okay, I'm sweeping all the humans away because I want resources, just the equilibrium is very likely just going to push humans out of the way more and more just because our ability to resist is very little because at the end of the day, we don't have power that's coming from our labor and from our thoughts anymore. So the power just has to come from like system, right? Institutions like remaining robust. But like there's entropy. I mean, the default state isn't for an institution to remain robust literally forever. So like time is working against us.
Yeah. Hypothetically, let's say it's the year 2030. If like not much has changed in the world except for, GDP growth is significantly higher than we expected. Maybe the decay of institutions is higher than expected. But aside from that, there hasn't been radical changes in the world. Are you revising your P-Doom or are things still in line, you think, for 50% chance of doom by 2040?
It's a good question to ask, like, how does somebody like me update to a lower P-Doom, right? Like, what do I need to see? And I think that the key to that is whether my threshold is met. Because I have a conditional prediction based on a threshold where it's the threshold of AIs being more powerful at steering outcomes than humans are. That to me is the threshold. It's what Eliezer calls optimization. And you can treat it as being synonymous with intelligence. I prefer to just be like, whatever, don't worry about intelligence. What I'm scared about is the power to steer the future. And yes, in many ways, smarter humans can steer the future better, but whatever. Just worry about AIs that can steer the future better than a human can. Yeah. For example, if you put an AI in somebody's earphones and they come and do a construction job, like pretty soon the AI is going to give them like really good step-by-step instructions to be like really effective at doing construction, even if they have no experience. And I'll like generalize that to like lots of jobs and like an army working for the AI, and then have the AI like strategize what all this stuff is going to happen. Like at some point you can give the AI credit that it's reached the threshold where it can now like steer projects and steer deliverables and steer high-level outcomes, even like country-level projects, space programs. It can steer better than the best humans can steer. That is a point where if we get to that point and still there's no doom, that's when my hypothesis starts really breaking, because my hypothesis is conditional on reaching this point.
Okay. What if we haven't reached that point by 2030? Do you expect us to start reaching that point within the next 5 years?
So not reaching that point is definitely a way to not be doomed. If you ask me for my time, and this is roughly synonymous with what an AI company would call the AGI timeline, or like the Metaculus prediction market would say like, hey, when's AGI coming? And currently they'll say like 2031, 2032. Mm-hmm. I don't think I have more insight about the timeline than that kind of consensus or what the AI companies are saying, or AI 2027, which I think is now moved to like 2028, 2029, like the people who wrote that. I think they're all roughly in the right ballpark. That jives with my own understanding. I'm not an AI expert, but I do have a pretty deep software engineering background. And I agree, it's probably coming in between 1 and 15 years. That's probably the most likely, maybe 20 or 30. I definitely get shocked if we're not seeing progress toward it on a decades level. So to your question, I think there's 2 questions you can ask. How do I update if we get to the threshold where I admit we have AGI, we have superhuman outcome steerers, and yet we don't see like doom starting? Then I have to update for sure. And the other question of like, wait, 10 years went by and we don't even see much progress toward AGI, like we're kind of stuck very similar to where we are today, then I'd be very willing to update my timelines of when we get to AGI, but I wouldn't update my conditional prediction of like when we have true AGI in terms of outcome steering, then we're doomed.
Okay, great answers. Thank you. So you got 50% for P-Doom. What is the remaining 50%? How much of that is split between like things just keep plodding along because we have an AI winter versus eternal utopia versus other things?
Most of the 50% of us not getting doomed, I think, is just basically pausing AI or not getting super intelligent. So, like, if you tell me as an assumption, oh, you definitely get superhuman outcome steering AIs, which seems like a likely assumption, but if you tell me this is for sure happening, then I think I probably get up to like 75% be doomed, something like that. Like, it's very significant of an increase when you tell me that the AIs actually exist. So I'm really hoping that these super intelligent AIs just won't exist because we'll pause AI or something, or we'll slow it down or figure out alignment. Take the time. But in terms of like other scenarios, I think the most likely doom scenario is a good old fashioned Yudkowskian style FOOM. I'm bringing FOOM back. I feel like people don't talk about that much anymore.
FOOM on the order of days?
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not on the order of days, I think big parts of the plan will be in motion on the order of days or even hours. Like, so for example, I think that the internet is just full of very low hanging fruit in terms of computer security. I definitely think you can build a botnet in a matter of like hours. Do you guys know Stephen Burns?
No.
No.
I didn't know him very well myself. He's posted on Less Wrong a few times, but I recently read he posted something like a week ago where he's talking about like why he still sees FOOM happening, and he's just kind of collecting all his thoughts. And he's like, hey guys, keep your eye on the ball here. Like the original FOOM still seems very likely to happen, even though LLMs are the hot new thing, and it's so tempting to study LLMs and to be like, oh, how are LLMs going to fail? How nice are they going to be? How far can we push them? He's basically saying, look, there's going to be another regime that he calls brain-like AGI. I'm going to have him on my show soon. And he's saying at the end of the day, the AIs that actually get stuff done, they're not going to have a lot of the properties we've come to know and love for LLMs. There's going to be fundamental differences. For example, you're really going to see instrumental convergence kick in. That's like his hypothesis, which I agree with. It's basically my hypothesis too.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
He's basically saying LLMs, the same reason why like GPT 4.5 kind of hit a wall, right? Like the curve bent, and suddenly it's like, okay, we can't literally just throw that much more scale, or at least we need like many, many orders of magnitude because the curve is definitely bending. And yet you're still seeing AIs get more useful for a bunch of other reasons. Like we're mixing in other puzzle pieces, like, reinforcement learning is a puzzle piece that makes AIs do better, like, I don't know, solve math better because they mixed in reinforcement learning and they have LLM technology. I personally am not familiar with exactly how they mix, but basically we have other puzzle pieces. The same reason that makes LLMs really nice and have good vibes is also the same reason why they're not going to take us all the way to true AGI.
Why is that?
It's basically because they just can't. They just can't be evil, right? So it's like, yeah, they kind of act like they don't want to be evil, but also they can't be evil.
Okay, so it's an alignment by default argument?
People say, like, look at these LLMs. I feel so good about the path to AGI right now, which I feel like Sam Altman and certainly, Rune from OpenAI. I think a lot of people working at AI companies, except maybe Anthropic, but a lot of people working at the other AI companies, I think have this deep intuition of like, look, we're stewarding this fine. Everything we're seeing out of our AIs, it's giving us good vibes. Like, look, the AI tried to help us. It's a good AI. So a lot of good vibes are coming out of the chatbots right now. And I'm not going to lie, when I use the AI, I get great vibes. It's like so helpful. It's like my doctor. It's like helping me do projects. Like I get great vibes from the AI. The only problem is the reason we don't see it like scheming and creating real damage is just because its capabilities are limited. Like we lucked into the situation where the LLM paradigm, right, the idea of like predicting the next token and the way that they're trained, it just happens to be like incredibly useful at answering these questions and having a lot of like really useful thoughts. But the full feedback loop of like letting it run by itself and achieve superhuman outcomes, the same reason why it still needs humans to like push it along and take a look at it and correct it, the same reason why it's limited in that way is also the reason why it's not causing a lot of damage and it's sticking to good vibes.
Being that it doesn't have a lot of power.
Exactly, right? So it has like the perfect amount of power where it just can't go and do that much damage. And so the only time that we interact with it is times when it's like being helpful.
Okay. And is the idea that different neural network AI systems are going to have more power, or that these LLMs will eventually?
I think the most likely scenario is we're going to get, GPT 4.5 represents what happens when you just naively take the exact same architecture and just shovel more data into it. Mm-hmm. That's probably true. You probably just need to mix in a few more ingredients, but it could be like a small number of ingredients, right? I have no idea how small the tweak can be. Probably pretty small. And my understanding is that they are actually doing that. Like they're doing new systems where they're just mixing things in different ways. They're saying like, okay, let's combine them. Let's route to the right thing. Let's have them vote and take like the best, or, like invoke different techniques at different times. But I think reinforcement learning is like the single most powerful puzzle piece that they haven't mixed into it that much. Like, I don't know, deeper levels of self-play and combined with like, okay, take actions in the real world and collect data about that. And then like train the same way you train to win at Go. Basically like the magic that makes you win at Go, I don't think has been fully incorporated into today's LLMs.
Right. I'm going to jump back to Doom debates because that was supposedly what we're here to talk about, and I realized that we have not talked about it very much. This is your project to try to get the word of Doom out to more people. How do you think that's going so far? I know it's not been around for a very, very long time yet, but what do you feel like your progress is like?
So I think a good metric is watch hours per month. So we just crossed like 30,000, which feels pretty impactful. That 30,000 hours of people's consciousness per month is getting spent watching the content. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket by the standards of like the Joe Rogans of the world.
Right.
If we're doubling about every 3 months, so if you give me like 4 more doublings, suddenly I really get on the map as like, there's actually a popular podcast.
Fantastic.
Exponential growth is a curve we're all very familiar with.
Yes.
Exactly. And it's also a rising tide, right? So I'm fully expecting that there's just going to be more interest into this category. And I do think that among the category, I'm doing pretty well. Certainly people in the category seem to know of the show. And I feel like there's some episodes that are kind of like must listen if there's like a figure that you respect and they're finally coming to debate. It's really not like, hey, I've already seen this guy on a different show, so I don't need to see him on Doom Debates. It's like, no, you need to see him on Doom Debates because I'm the only one who actually like pulls out their view. I guess that's like my specialty. So I'm pretty optimistic that there's like a tailwind. And it's also kind of a win-win for me because if the field dies down, it's like, well, at least that lowers my P-Doom if the film calms goes, right? So either way, I win.
It seems like a tool you've landed on is the Doom Train. What is the Doom Train?
The Doom Train is a lattice work of arguments. It's not really a linear train, but it's the idea that if you're going to be convinced that Doom is high, it means you have to first be convinced of all these other dependent claims. And so the stops on the Doom Train, very high level. The first stop is like, hey, are we likely to get superintelligence anytime soon? Or are we going to go 1,000 years without getting superintelligence? Robin Hanson is an example of somebody who's like, yeah, I can definitely see us going 100 years without getting superintelligence. I get the impression he's like 50-50 on that. And he said something like that when he was on my show. So that's like a very early stop on the Doom Train. And he'll say something like, I've seen so many AI summers followed by AI winters. This is probably just another AI summer. Okay, so bye-bye, Robin. He's getting off on the first stop. And then the next stop would be like, okay, how much headroom is there above human intelligence? Do you think Einstein is almost as smart as it's possible to be? Douglas Hofstadter, I think, remarked in like the 70s when he was writing Gödel Bach that he has a very hard time imagining what it means to be a mind smarter than Einstein. But I think he's repented since then. I think he's admitted that he's been very blown away and scared by how much LLMs are doing, and he has like a different opinion now. So that would be a stop on the Doom Train, just being like, what does it even mean to be smarter than Einstein? How much smarter can you be? And my answer is like a hell of a lot smarter in terms of like, using your brain to get outcomes. And then another stop is like the orthogonality thesis. Like, hey, what if really smart AIs just become moral? And another stop is instrumental convergence, where some people get off because they're like, I just don't see why they have to like seek power or like be hardcore. I think they can just be like chill buddies. And then like the final stops are like, okay, yeah, sure, there's going to be these AIs and they're going to be hard to align. This is kind of like the Jan LeCun stop where it's like, yeah, but we'll just do it. We'll have projects and we'll grapple with it and we'll succeed because that's what the human race does. So roughly, if you aren't convinced by any of these stops, like I'm not, then you kind of get to the end and you're at the last station, which is like, oh, so P-Doom is just high. So I've walked her through the entire train. And when I meet people who haven't given much thought to the argument, usually I don't have to walk them through the whole train step by step. It's more like a la carte, like, okay, just tell me where you want to get off. Like, you just throw your own objections at me in whatever order. But when they come on my show, I usually just systematically, what do you call it? Like when they look at I do like a spectrograph of like which stops they want to get off at.
I like that explicitly laid out approach because that's how I've been handling it like the last couple of years. Because I used to, if someone asked me about it, I would kind of give them like the long spiel. And then I realized, hey, this might not be that interesting to them. And I have no idea what parts of this they already know. Now, if I'm at a party and I like overhear a conversation of like, oh yeah, this will never happen, or I'm not worried about it. I'm not like an asshole who'll just interject. But if the situation applies for it, I can lean in and be like, well, hold on, like, where do you get off the train? Everyone I've talked to has gotten off at one of those places, and I like that you've got it listed out that way. That's really cool.
Yeah, I was originally going to call the show Doom Train because the thing about a debate is, I never change the guest's mind. There's actually one guest who's coming out who actually like updated a few percent. That was like my greatest victory, like down or up 5 percentage points after talking to me. But it's very rare. Usually there's like a 0 point update. But the reason why I think the episodes are productive is because the space of positions is so high, right? Everybody has their own Doom DNA. Maybe that's a new term I should use, but it's like, you go to 23andMe and I want to sequence your Doom genome or, get the Doom spectrum in that analogy. Like light sources have a spectrum. Different people have different spectrums. I just thought that this would be like a show cataloging everybody's Doom DNA. Like these are all of our different positions in a high dimensional Doom space. Even though to me it seems pretty overdetermined of like, yeah, these are all kind of like hopium stops. Like these are all very far from like what you just should believe by default. But that's what makes the show interesting.
I personally feel like a little bit of train fatigue, I think, when we go down like the entire track. I almost think it's better just to like get a guest's one or two really big stops and just focus on those. And then maybe people who watch the show for a long period of time can piece together all the stops on their own. Be like, oh, you're on this stop of the Doom Train. You should watch the episode with Richard Baxter or whoever. Because going through every single stop in the course of a show, like, at some point it's like, okay, I get it. We're going all the way to the end. I don't want to go all the way to the end again.
Yeah, it's a good point, and maybe I should even try to feel out before what a guest's biggest stop are and be like, okay, today we're going to be debating your biggest stops, which are this, and that way save some time hitting every stop.
Do you prep for individual guests sometimes, or is it just like I kind of feel them out as I go?
I do a variable amount of prep. It kind of depends on like either the prominence of the guest or like my own personal interest in the guest. So if there's a guest that I'm mildly interested in and isn't prominent, then I might be more like wing it. But I have very few of those kind of guests now because I'm really trying to make each episode count right now, just because I'm already at my limit of like production. So that's not even like a realistic scenario these days. Yeah, I mean, a typical guest is just somebody that I've like followed their work. I go and I make like a big outline of all the different things I want to ask them about, and I'll like load up a bunch of podcasts of stuff they've done or stuff to read. So yeah, I'll do a little bit of the Dorkesh status of like diving into their stuff. I don't think I go quite as elaborate as him. Robin Hansen was probably among my like top 3 hardcore prep because, you know, Robin and Eliezer had a big Doom debate in 2008. And I'm like, I'm bringing the Doom debate back. Eliezer's tapped out, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to substitute in for the Eliezer position. And I really just read everything. I mean, I already read pretty much everything Robin Hansen writes, but I really went back and did the research. And I even did a couple of episodes where you can see me training, like Rocky in a training fight, where I even brought on somebody else to wear like a sign saying Robin Hansen and like take on the Robin Hansen, or actually I took on the Robin Hansen position and I did ideological Turing test against a different guy. You know, if you want to fight somebody, you have to like walk a mile in his shoes. I guess that was my single most elaborate prep. A lot of times when a guest is like deep into a certain field, and I'm not realistically going to get that deep in a week, I'm like, here, how about you help me make the outline, right? And then I'll come in and tweak. So that's like a big procedure I do too.
Neat. What's your biggest frustration been so far with a guest or with the show in general?
Well, I guess my biggest frustration is just I feel like it is right for the world to just have a bigger audience, just because in terms of the people who happen to know about the show, like that's the biggest bottleneck is there's a bunch of people who would really enjoy the show and get a lot of value out of it, and they just don't know it exists, or they've only seen like 2 seconds of it in passing. It's like, no, come watch the show, guys. So it's a little bit frustrating that I have to like climb these stairs of like incremental growth, and then it's like a waste because like I have these good episodes dropping by, and like these people who really should see them don't know that they exist yet. So now my work isn't getting as much leverage as it could. So, you know, this is like a champagne problem, I guess, but I guess it's kind of frustrating.
Do you have debates, or maybe not even full debates, but like conversations, or even debates, I don't know, with regular people in your day-to-day life?
I mean, I am a pretty disagreeable guy. I mean, I try to be friendly, but I'm like a natural contrarian, right? So that's just like where I'm comfortable. And so for me, it's no surprise I've settled into a niche where a bunch of people think one thing is true, and I think they're totally wrong, like for the most obvious reason ever, right? And then I'll just debate them all day long. Like it's kind of like, you know, if we're playing like a first-person shooter, I guess my natural instinct is just like I'm a camper, right? I'm not a very good sportsman. I'm just like, yeah, I'll just camp and shoot people. Like that's kind of like what Doom Debates is.
It really reminds me of the old atheism wars. It was fun, just like whenever you met somebody who was a theist, you're like, oh, hey, this is going to be fun. Let's talk about how wrong you are.
Right. Yeah, and I have kind of a one-track mind, you know, and people accuse the Silicon Valley types of like, every party, they just want to talk about AI Doom. Yeah, okay, sorry, I have a one-track mind. I can't help it.
What's the hardest thing to get across to, I mean, I guess like a normal person, but maybe even like a guest? What's like the one thing you consistently have a hard time conveying?
So a lot of the guests, it comes down to like discourse or like, you know, the jujitsu, the martial art of updating your beliefs. You know, so I was really happy with my one guest who recently changed his mind. I commended him. The episode's coming out soon. I commended him because it's like, you can see he's doing the art, right? He's a student of the art. And most people are just very steeped in more of the punditry or the high school type of debate, right? Where it's like, well, I'm just going to make points, or I'm going to defend my ego. That is where I wish the guests would step it up in terms of being like, yes, we are both integrating information, and let me show you my crux, you know, double crux. Yeah. I will hand you my crux for you to potentially attack, right? I will plant my flag and let you try to capture my flag, as opposed to like ducking and weaving and not even showing what it takes to change my mind.
Have you changed your mind on anything since you started the show?
So I think gradual disempowerment is probably the biggest reason. David Duveneau, that is a smart cookie right there. He came on the show. He made a lot of great points because it's what I said before, right? Where I used to just be like, yeah, unemployment, it's not a problem. And I'm like, oof, yeah, there's actually like a pretty continuous slope here where we lose economic leverage. I mean, okay, it's not continuous. I think there's a discontinuity at like FOOM, but even if there's no FOOM, I think there's a very slippery slope. And I feel like that could be a bias, right? Where some people are like, no, it's not. It's not as slippery as it looks, but this looks very slippery, and this is a new thing that I've learned.
I think this is a thing that you don't get really outside of not just rationalist circles, but rationalists who were there for in most of the sequences. I remember this from the New Atheism days, and for really any time you talk with anyone, people do not change their minds in a conversation. I didn't change my mind in a conversation. I started off a theist. I was originally on the defending God side, and it took months for me to move from that. There was never any one conversation where I changed. It was a slow process. So I don't expect anyone to change in one conversation, unless maybe sometimes if like they've gone through the sequences. And I think that's really what one of the major things Eliezer was trying to do, right? Teach people the art of being able to update on the fly and say, oh no, I think maybe I was wrong about this. I'm going to adjust a little bit. And that's just incredibly rare.
Yeah. And how to actually change your mind is a whole subsequence.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I would have been here without the Eliezer training, right? It's like, would I have figured out myself how important it is to like make sure to actually change your mind sometimes and double crux? It would be fascinating to replay my life again, but without the fork in the road of reading the sequences.
Yeah.
I feel like the tools were less good in other domains. Like my personality and brain type was already primed for this kind of thing. So when I was introduced to it, I was, engrossed immediately. You certainly don't learn great critical thinking skills from the trenches of the New Atheism Wars. You learn great argument skills.
Yeah.
I loved the analogy to camping in a first-person shooter because that's what it felt like back then. It's like, oh, someone's making the natural selection, can't make complicated changes argument. Let's dust off these papers then. As much as we tried to act like, oh, I'm going to treat this like the first time, and I'm going to try and treat this like a fresh argument, and maybe they'll change my mind this time. After your 50th one, you're like, okay, they make three kinds of arguments. This is the third kind. I know exactly what I'll have to say here. You mentioned James Randi. He had contemporaries in the debunking field that would go to like ghost reportings. This will tie back, I swear. They would say, yep, I treated it like it might be true every time. And I just don't know if I believed them. The tools from those camps where I came from didn't have things like double crux and bottom line reasoning and a lot of other things that really help elucidate the cases where it's like, oh, you know what? I am thinking poorly in the situation. I think it was harder with the other tool sets to realize like, oh, this is weak thinking versus this is stronger thinking. I'm actually putting in effort here.
Well, I want to put in a good word for camping, though, because if you go back to the Atheist Wars, remember the Four Horsemen, right? Mm-hmm. Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, Dawkins, and Hitchens, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, those guys were basically campers, right? Busting out similar arguments, but like so eloquently. And I feel like they did a lot of good. They like moved society forward a little bit. I really feel like the world needs campers right now. Doom Debates is basically me camping. And on one hand, I'm like letting myself be in my comfort zone of camping, right? I'm not stretching like, okay, Liron, learn something new, go enter a new chapter of life. But I'm like, well, wait a minute. We really do need all the people who are like ignoring this or thinking it's all good. We really do need to fearmonger them. Like somebody really does have to just sit here and camp. So I'm taking one for the team, guys.
No, it's good. And I didn't mean to besmirch it entirely. I think what I was just thinking was that it's not a scout mindset.
Right.
Right. And so, and things like scout mindset is not a term that would exist without the rationalist community. Mm. That's the new Drila Galis book.
Scout Mindset is a great term, yeah, and that's a really good book too. Yeah, I mean, I certainly try to maintain Scout Mindset. So that's the other thing, right, is when people come to debate me, I think a common reaction, which I'm really happy with, is people are like, wow, you got the best out of him. Like I'm normally frustrated by this person, but you got the best out of him. And I guess the reason is because it's like I step into their shoes. It's like pacing and leading. It's like, okay, you're saying this. Actually, that's the funny thing is probably more than 50% of stuff coming out of my mouth in debates is literally just ideological Turing test of like, oh, you're saying this. So then when this hypothetical comes up, your position implies this and this is hypothetical. And all I'm doing is letting them correct themselves because in my mind, the only time that I can really counter argue is when I've really nailed down what their position is. But it takes me like the whole 2 hours to nail down what their position is. And then finally I'm like, okay, and this is why I disagree. Like that, and that's a wrap, folks. But the whole time, I can still build up their ego, being like, oh yeah, so your position says this. Like that's interesting. I'm happy to like compliment them on stuff I like. So unlike a Fox News type of debate or a high school debate, I really am doing double crux and outlining the other person's position. So worst case, if somebody doesn't care about doom, like I think it's rare to actually see these kind of debates out there in society.
The crazy thing is, it feels like the lesser quality debates of, the Four Horsemen, I don't want to call them lesser quality, different style of debates, right? Like, we consider them not as good because they aren't using the rationalist techniques to actually change minds, but like, they worked, basically. They were more like displays of debating skill. Like, it was a sport for the audience. Over time, the audience, the nation at large, did change drastically to give much less respect to religion in general and accept that, yeah, atheism is actually probably fine and just a way that people can live their lives, and they seem to have a point.
It's funny, though, because when you go on social media, everybody's like, why are people not doing atheism debates anymore? And my go-to answer is like, I think atheism won.
Yeah. It's just accepted now. Yeah.
Right, because the thing is, and then people act like, no, you have no idea what being a Christian is like. I'm like, well, I have no idea what being a Christian is like, but nobody is making arguments in the public square, at least by public square, I just mean like tech Twitter. Nobody's actually making arguments whose premises are religious. Yeah. So the fact that they've, self-deported themselves, right, into like niche forums, and they're not bringing that stuff to the main square, I don't see people on tech Twitter saying the old argument from the George W. Bush year 2000 era of like, we got to stop stem cell research because God hates it or whatever, right? Like, that's not part of the discourse anymore. And in that sense, atheism seems to have clearly won.
Yeah. It's not obviously wrong. Maybe there should be a bit more of that sort of exhibition style fighting in public.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what that would look like. I guess get a really prominent, everything's going to turn out fine. I mean, what would be awesome is to get Yudkowsky and Sam Altman in a room for 2 hours to argue about AI safety, like publicly. Because Altman, he had that blog post, a week or two ago about the gentle singularity and how nice it is.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have somebody rip that to shreds who would also like attract a big audience. So that's why I mentioned Yudkowsky. Of course, you should totally do it too. You get him on Doom debates.
Yeah.
But
well, I do reaction episodes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so a lot of my episodes, they're not even me debating somebody. It's like the debate that I wish that I would have. For example, I did like a Steven Pinker reaction episode because I saw Steven Pinker going on somebody else's podcast for, something tells me he's not ready to go on my podcast yet. And he's just making all these weak points and the host isn't pushing back at all. So it's like, I'll do it. And I call it Somebody is Wrong on the Internet, the podcast.
Yeah.
Love it.
This was very much the early days of New Atheism. Thunderfoot and various other people just posting videos doing that kind of thing.
That's a name I've not heard in several years.
Right?
Nice memory.
I feel like you guys were even harder core about the atheist wars than I was, but I was pretty hardcore.
What advice would you give to like the average rationalist talking to the average normie, their mom or their cousin or something about AI doom?
My general advice to rationalists communicating is I just find that the disconnect that I see compared to my own style is like they care a lot about like hedging, right, and being precise.
Yes.
And they don't do this move that I call zooming out, where it's like you should be precise, but also zoom out and give the most precise low resolution thing that you can. Like be low resolution. And that's like the perfect excuse. Like, oh, technically you didn't say something precise. Right, because you said it at low resolution. You used few words to say it. You said it in an entertaining style. So you get a pass. And that's my move.
So much less of this hedging, I think, and it's possible that, and those sorts of things?
Exactly, because so I'm like a fan of rationalist content, right? But it is pretty difficult for me to get through less wrong posts. And they're probably doing something right because I noticed the community will upvote some posts that I find very difficult to get through, that are very long and difficult to get through. And then other people will like make fun of less wrong for rewarding that particular style. And like, I'm sure it has its virtues, like Scott Alexander's posts about like, more than you wanted to know. Like those are very good posts, but I personally skip them. It is in fact more than I wanted to know, at least at that density level. So I think that when rationalists are going to communicate with normies, I think the go-to move that I recommend they do is just that zooming out.
Can you give an example of what a zooming out would look like, as opposed to how people normally do it?
Yeah. So for example, like zooming out of my doom argument is me saying, instead of like adding a million caveats, I'm like, hey, I think AGI is coming soon, and I think we're not prepared for AGI. What do you think? Like that would be how I communicate the entire doom argument to a normie.
Okay, excellent.
I wonder if we could do like a 5-minute, or maybe it might take longer, maybe it wouldn't be a fruitful exercise if we tried to crunch it down, where I played the Doom skeptic and you played the pro-Doom.
Yeah, we could if you want. Just in terms of time, I think we have like 15 minutes left, so maybe you could do like list out what you want to make sure to hit.
Yeah, well, let's save that if we run out of other things to talk about for sure.
You mentioned that you have some things to say about the state of rational arguments in the wild. with your experience trying to have viral debates or dunks while upholding rationality standards of discourse?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time on Twitter, and occasionally people like make fun of me generally using like low blows. And I'm like, well, I guess you like successfully got people to like your dunk, but that's like pretty messed up. I see A16Z as like the king of Mark Andreessen acts like he's like a Renaissance man. He's like so enlightened and he's like read so many books. But then he writes things like the Techno Optimist Manifesto, where he's he's basically firing low blows, blocking people who disagree with him. So he's kind of he's having his cake and eating it too, in terms of like cultivating this reputation. Like he's at such an elite tier of arguing, but then also like flouting basic standards of discourse. This is going to be the theme of an episode of my show. I often do reaction episodes. I want to do a personalized reaction episode to just Mark Andreessen, the person.
Oh, neat. What is the state of argument in the wild then? Pretty bad?
Oh, yeah. So it's definitely pretty bad. I guess double crux is the thing that just hasn't quite worked its way into discourse yet. A lot of things have, like asking about probabilities is less frowned upon than it used to be. So like that's a good rational tool that's in discourse. But the idea of like, hey, you're not telling me what I can do to change your mind, like that's something that I wish people do more. And then also the etiquette of like, if somebody starts a thread that's on a certain topic and then you're arguing with that person, and then in the middle of the thread, the person kind of wins, but then you just pivot to a new topic. I have to call people out and be like, wait, hold on. You have to explicitly admit that we closed out the original topic before I'm going to engage in this new topic. So like that's an example of etiquette that I think people don't get.
When you call them out on that, do they actually acknowledge it, or what happens then?
Like 20% of the time they do. A lot of times they just double down on their pivot.
What's beneficial for that, though, is it's not necessarily catching the person. It's reminding the audience, like, hey, remember the argument we were having before? The completely different argument? I won that one. Now we can talk about this new thing. That's the kind of thing that could fly under the audience's radar if they're just watching the debate casually or something, or reading along with it.
That's right. The larger observation here is we as a society, we need a discourse referee, or like we need an arena for discourse, right? Like, like the Presidential Debate Commission, it's very domain specific, but at least it's trying to do that job for presidents debating each other. But then you go onto Twitter and you have these extremely important debates, like Mark Andreessen telling everybody that AI is going to be fine. Or, people lost billions on crypto investing in Ponzi schemes that they thought were good use cases. If we just have a higher quality debate, but the problem with having higher quality debates is right now somebody will do these low blow moves and they'll win that way, right? They'll like win dirty and there's nobody blowing the whistle on them. And so it's really wasting a lot of time for us as a civilization that we haven't designated somebody to be like, and you guys call yourselves the Bayesian conspiracy, right? That's based on Eliezer's fiction of a society that has well-respected deep institutions to maintain the integrity of changing your mind, which includes the integrity of debates, and we don't have that. Like our society, like it's really failing. Like when you think about how good you'd expect society to be, like me as a kid, I thought that society would have like higher quality debates. I thought that the political spectrum wouldn't be like a one-dimensional left-right thing. But no, it turns out we're still missing, a lot of these things still need to be patched in.
Okay, but that's not going to happen. Or at least certainly not within the next several years, which is, the time scale where we're having to have these debates in. So what do you do in the meantime instead?
Well, my quick fix is to just make my show a sanctuary. Like when you come on my show, you're either going to debate me and I'm going to use double crux, or it'll be me moderating a debate or having another moderator that I trust, and we'll make sure that the debate is high quality. So that way, if somebody's at least come and made their case on Doom debates, they should get like an award for being like, hey, I engaged at a high standard.
All right. How does that fit with your going low resolution when talking to more normie people?
Well, if you watch a whole episode of Doom debates, then the level of resolution is going to be not low, not super high, but, just like the right level of resolution to figure out the crux of disagreement.
Yeah. Can you go more low resolution out in the wild and not be as rigorous? Or do you think this is like really important? Would you rather just funnel people towards Doom debates rather than chatting in public, I guess, is the question.
Well, that gets into etiquette, right? Because my natural tendency is to and this is frankly a very Aspie thing, but it's to oh, you want to talk about this topic? All right, let's get deep into this topic. And that just doesn't play well with the normies, right? That's just not how social interaction is expected to work. So I really just try to feel out the conversation, and usually feeling out the conversation is they don't want to go deep, right? So you just have to be mindful of that as a matter of communication skills.
Yeah, that's something I've had to adjust to in the last few years. Of somebody will say something that to me is kind of outlandish. I'll be like, okay, let's be polite about this. And I'll say, I've never heard that argument before. Can you elaborate on that? that's surprising. And then I think most people find, you mentioned just like the social etiquette of how people respond to like, let's dig deeper. Most people hate that. And I think that's really weird because I love that. We had our monthly Less Strong meetup last night. That's the kind of culture of the room. If someone says something and they'll be like, hold on a second, let's unpack that. Yeah. And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do this. Rather than, well, I don't really know and I don't really feel like it. The other thing about like doing it in public is like, there's usually a smaller audience, but also you're not going to spend 2 full hours talking with them about it. It's different there. But yeah, I think there's lots of disanalogies to the structured show versus like bumping into somebody at, well, I was going to say, if you're at Less Online, the people there might be down for a 2-hour just random sit down and debate.
Yeah, Less Online was created specifically as a space where we can have these sorts of interactions.
Yeah. Exactly.
You should sniff it out, and I mean literally sniff if it smells like BO, and if so, you're probably good to go into a rant.
Okay. I was thinking the Four Horsemen, and I'm especially thinking of Hitchens, they could have like the high standards of discourse, and oftentimes would, which is like why we loved them. We really liked watching them do that. But like one of the things I really loved about Hitchens also was that he didn't always have to do that. When other people went low, he would go low too and just like sling back. And that was a lot of fun to watch. Do you think that's just like, that's a bad idea and we shouldn't do that at all and retain our high standards? Because it was really fun to watch him do that.
So I've heard some Hitchens, and I don't have specific memory. I mean, he's got away with words, the late Hitchens. I don't have specific examples of being like, man, that was a low blow. I wouldn't do that blow, but I got some entertainment out of it. I don't have specific examples, but I feel comfortable the way that I don't feel like I have to go low because I already have the tool that I can make fun of other people going low. And that's already, like, it's like I still do a dunk, but it's like a high integrity dunk. So I kind of get the best of both worlds.
There's that old adage, especially if internet debate, like don't debate with idiots. They'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. Mm-hmm. What was amazing about Hitch was that he could be at that level and still cream them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It wasn't from lots of experience of being an idiot. I think it was just lots of experience debating people. I think there's something artful about like his low blow moves. I can only think of a couple where he'd call somebody out on their bad character or something. I'm thinking of like a debate that he and Stephen Fry were debating like 2 Catholic bishops or something. He is like, you're telling me that my friend is an abomination because Stephen Fry is gay. That would almost be a low move to drag out somebody and be like, you're telling me that this cute puppy is a bad thing, and yet it really works there. I think it's just because you're used to like, I don't know. I'm trying to think. There are definitely some like low class debaters that like we don't remember anymore because they weren't as impactful, right? So I think the key is to find a synergy there.
The hard part is like finding the people with the charisma and the skills to pull that off.
Well, luckily, we're talking with one, so.
Yeah, I mean, but it's true. If you look at the top tier of debaters, you usually don't find people who are like such great role models about having integrity. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, Sam Harris, I'm actually really happy with Sam Harris overall. I have very few nitpicks for him. So he's kind of a demonstration that it's possible. He's kind of low on the entertainment dunking style. I mean, he still dunks, he still does, but he just does it in such like a calm, measured way. I actually see myself as being higher on the entertainment showmanship axis than Sam Harris, but I'm a huge fan of Sam. My point is just like I want to get another star on the Walk of Fame of like debaters that actually made it while having integrity.
I want that for you too. I think it's important work that you're doing, and it's nice that you've got the approach that you do, your commitment to intellectual rigor and integrity, and I'm scrolling through the backlog of episodes. I haven't looked at them all, actually. I certainly haven't listened to them all, but I'm looking forward to many of these.
Nice.
I feel like, I forget where it was. It might have been like Econ Talk or something, which I have so many problems with that show. They had Scott Sumner on talking about AI is aligned by default. It's kind of his thing. It was mainly, it's like giving him a platform just to expound on that rather than challenge. So I'm really looking forward to watching him get challenged on that directly. I don't think I've seen that before. So for listeners of the Bayesian Conspiracy, I'm plugging Doom Debates. Check it out. It's great.
Real quick, since we're almost out of time, do your guests ever get mad at you at how directly you challenge them, or is this something they expect coming in?
So this has worked out really well. Sometimes a guest will come in. From my perspective, they're like so obviously wrong, and I just keep pointing out while they're wrong for the whole episode. I'm like, all right, nice. That was a good episode. I feel like I made my points. I got my dunks in. And then they walk away, and they're like happy with their performance. Like their audience was like, oh yeah, that guest slayed you, Liron. And my audience is like, Liron slayed. So it's just this nice hologram type of toy where everybody's just seeing the picture that they expect. And I'm like, okay, well, great. They walk away feeling so good. And it's like, hey, we should do another round too. So, everybody wins, I guess.
That's also reminiscent of the new atheism debates. A lot of the time people would go in for their preferred side and watch their preferred side win and think it was a landslide. And granted, I always thought that it was the New Atheists that were pretty much coming out on top, but I think that the other half of the audience didn't feel that way.
I do think that there is the hidden audience of independents who is slowly getting their mind changed a little bit every time they watch the episode, and that's really why I do it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I shouldn't say half and half. I should say maybe third, and third or something. That's I think the point of having these conversations in public rather than just like at parties. Well, as you already gave the two reasons why Doom Debates exists. And also, I'd have to imagine that they're probably expecting the debate-style format and maybe some hard pushback, because it's not called, Doom-friendly discussions. It's called Doom Debates.
Right.
So, yeah.
Doom, tea, and crumpets.
Right. I mean, I hope that it becomes a mark of honor that somebody has the balls to come on Doom Debates. I mean, I certainly respect them more than people who like screen their other podcasts. Before we wrap up, let's do a shout out to Bayesian Conspiracy. How long have you guys been doing the podcast?
Oh, thank you. Gosh, it's 9 years now?
Coming up on 9, I think, yeah. Either we just passed it or, yeah, that sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah, I listened to a good amount of episodes over the years. I think Marshall Polaris first got me into it, and this was all the way back in like 2017. Oh,
wow.
I'm just like, yeah, I've been listening to your podcast for a little while. Oh, wait, I've been listening for like 8 years.
Yeah.
Like pretty much the entire lifetime. It's like time really flies.
Yeah.
February 17th,
I'm glad
2016.
you guys exist.
Thank you.
Right, yeah.
Wow.
The world needs more, quality Bayesian perspectives.
Well, thanks. And thank you for putting on Doom Debates, because the world really needs to wake up to this thing, too.
All right, so viewers, go watch, if you watch one show, go watch the other show right now.
Yes, and listeners,
Seconded.
Yeah, go check out Doom Debates right now. What is the 2 ones that you're most happy with that you would funnel people to if they only had time for 1 or 2?
Mark Israetel, if you want my most popular episode with a YouTube star who's a bodybuilder and an AI pundit, go check out me versus Mike Israetel. If you want an episode where it's just somebody who's really thoughtful and I'm basically interviewing him, not so much debating, then go check out David Duveneau.
Excellent. We will have links to both of those in the show notes.
What are your 2 most recommended episodes?
Oh, shit.
I was hoping you wouldn't ask.
So I've had it on my task list to make a best of for a long time now, because like I looked at our archives, so I'm like, Jesus Christ, 240 episodes. I've had people ask me like, what should I start with? These are between 1 and 2 hours each, and I don't have time for this many hours. And I'm like, shit, I don't know.
Here's what I tell people when this came up a few times at like Less Online and stuff. I would never wish the entire backlog my worst enemy.
No.
I certainly would never listen to it, and I was there. So I would say scroll through, like sort by most recent, because the newer ones trend better than certainly the earliest ones. And just scroll through and find like a guest or a title that sounds interesting. A lot of the times that I'd recommend were the most fun for me to record, might not be like the most fun for people to listen to. Like I mentioned, I was listening to Julie Galos' Rationally Speaking podcast back in the day. I was also listening to like Brian Dunning's Skeptoid, and he's been on our show twice, and like that's awesome. But like most people probably wouldn't feel like the level of excitement about that I do. So yeah, start from the top and find a fun one.
I would recommend something, in the 190s to 220s range. I really liked our episode with Tracing Woodgrains on the social justice religion. Simulacra Levels with Zvi was really good, I thought. He's really interesting to talk to. In the Simulacra Levels, it was nice to nail down what those are more. I know this isn't everyone's cup of tea, but I really enjoyed talking with Lucy Belmont with the world's most wholesome gangbang.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember that one. That was a good episode for sure.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Our topics are very varied. The old AlphaGo episode was, that was a long time ago now, but I found that one really interesting just because of how it opened my eyes at the time. Pick something that sounds interesting, I guess. Any of those 3 are great ways to start.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Listeners, you guys can go and search Lucy Belmont, and you're going to see 2 nerdy guys talking about a gangbang.
Yes. It's a lot of fun.
It was an interesting conversation. Yeah.
Do you guys have, don't you guys do like premium content?
We do. Premium content is mostly every now and then we ask some, shit, I should have come up with a question to ask you. You know what? I will, real quick. We often ask a guest a question which only goes in the premium content. And by often, I mean like maybe half the time. We do outtakes. Every now and then we do have like a bonus episode. Now that I've been in Berkeley and focusing a lot more on recording stuff, we're probably going to have more of those coming up.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for doing this. Long-time listener, and I'm honored that you guys did an episode with me.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm a new listener to your show, but I'm excited about it. So again, thanks for doing it, and everyone go check it out.
Yep, that's Doom Debates at YouTube, and also there's a place without video that has a link which we'll put in the show notes as well.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
All right, hey, great meeting you guys.
Yeah, you too.
You bet. Likewise.
Steven, that was a fun episode we just did.
That was. I liked it. Quick timestamp here. I can hear your pen clicking this entire time.
Oh shit, son of a
I
bitch.
thought we were
Okay,
going to stop.
thank you.
You bet. I thought you were going to stop when we started recording, but then, my fidget toy choices lately is twist ties. I have a
Nice.
nest of a mess of them that I put together here on my desk.
Silent like ninja. I noticed when we were doing the video portion of the show that like I was just rocking in my chair constantly, and I was like, that's not going to be great for the video. And then I said, fuck it, I'm gonna rock.
Yeah. What are
I
the
gotta rock.
what are the autists call it? Stimming. We're just finding our equilibrium and feeling good about it. So
Right. Back in my day, they just called it rocking like a chill dude.
that's right. Back in my day, they just called us spazzes, which apparently overseas is like way more of a slur than it is here.
I think it's kind of a slur here now too, but everything's a slur nowadays.
Yeah, at least when I was a kid, it was like the kind of thing you could say on daytime television, I think. I mean, then again, Sub was retarded. I remember like that was on early American Dad or early Family Guy episodes.
Let's bring them all back, man. Spazzes and retards and, whatever else.
Gays.
That's right.
Although the gays are back, but in a better way than the slurry way. So, all right.
Gays are awesome. No homo.
Yep. A little bit. Just a touch, It's
Right.
current year,
Yeah, the 5% homo that everybody's got.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that was a good sidebar. You got some rat gossip for us.
Yeah, rat gossip. I don't even know if it's gossip, because gossip usually entails like personal shit, and this isn't personal shit.
Rat news.
Sure.
But I know you can't say news because that's trademarked for your other podcast, The Mind Killer, your news podcast, which you do every 2 weeks, which if someone hasn't heard of, they should check that out. So
it's not even news. It's like the equivalent of whatever Blocked and Reported does.
Why don't you tell me and I'll decide what it is?
Okay, great. You remember Bentham's Bulldog?
Yes.
The guy with one of the worst arguments for God in existence. Bentham's Bulldog is an effective altruist, and in particular, he is very animal welfare pilled. He just posted an article. I don't even know what you call blog posts anymore. Essays. Let's go with essays because that sounds the most highfalutin. And I also post essays online
when you're blog posting, right?
Exactly. I'm producing a white paper every time I blog post. Thank you very much.
That's right. Yeah, we can find ways to add more syllables to this.
Yeah, but his post is called "Don't Eat Honey." The subtitle is "It's the worst animal product to eat by far."
Ugh.
He goes on through the normal thing that you would expect the vegans to go on about when they are trying to convince people that everything is awful. But
all right, I'll let you finish.
No, go ahead.
No. Well, there's definitely a case to be made there, and maybe he'll say something surprising about bees. That like maybe the case is like if it's impacting the pollination of other plants by impacting hives by harvesting honey. If you're dropping bee populations by doing that, that is really, really bad, actually. Not just bad for the bees, but bad for everyone else on Earth. So if that's the direction this argument took, then that'd be cool.
I regret to inform you that's not the direction this argument took.
Oh, man. Is it because B and Betchel's number both start with B, and this is somehow pissing off God? Sorry, that's being uncharitable. All right.
Right. It's not quite that bad, but boy, howdy. I think this can best be encapsulated by a Twitter poll that was posted by April, who I believe is Apri on Twitter, but was April back on our Discord when she was active in our Discord. Big fan, or I'm a big fan of her, rather. The X.com Twitter poll was, how many bees are equivalent to one human? And your options were 6, 7, 8, or see results.
See results.
The correct answer is 7. 7 bees are worth one human. This is taken from Bentham Bulldog's post. My favorite line out of here, when he's trying to quantify just how bad eating honey is. My favorite line out of here, which I had to pull out and share with my loved ones, was, if we assume very, very, very conservatively that a day of honeybee life is as unpleasant as a day spent attending a boring lecture, and then multiply by 0.15 to take into account the fact that bees are probably less sentient than people, and it goes on from there. And the 0.15 people equivalence is where we got 7 bees to 1 human.
Well, I'm actually disappointed in that argument. Like, I half-assed my way through the beginning of what I think would be a good argument in favor of not eating honey, assuming that it's true. But I guess the problem with that is that it's based on checkable premises, whereas X bees per human isn't checkable. So you can argue for whatever you want. Don't get me wrong. I think the vegans are in the ethically right sphere of moral concern right now. And we'll look back in 50 years or a century whenever we're all vegans and wonder like how the rest of us were eating factory farmed meat so long. I count myself among them. So like I'm not besmirching that entire line of reasoning like you casually did a drive-by out during your synopsis there. But that is a disappointing argument, and I will check out the whole post to see if there's anything I could salvage out of it. But like I like bees a lot, actually. But 7, I would think, honestly, on the order of like how many bees would it take to weigh the amount of a person? I think that might get me close. Maybe times that by 10. And I'd say, okay, now we're cooking with gas. Now we can actually start this conversation. However many bees it takes to make, let's say, 1,500 pounds. That's probably enough bees to be concerned about if we like had to trade off a person for it, right?
How many pounds of thermostats are equal to a human?
So I'm using this argument to back up, like, because bees are actually like crucial for the environment.
Oh no! Don't get me
So,
wrong. Like
so that's the argument that I was taking. If we're gonna wipe out many tens of thousands of bees or whatever,
yeah,
then that would be something to worth like, okay, now do we want to start weighing this against a single person? Because this could set back like farming infrastructure or something, right?
yeah, I'm on board for them being instrumentally useful. Yes, but in terms of them being equivalent to humans, no.
I don't think you can stack enough bees on top of each other to have like the moral salience of one human mind.
Well, according to Bentham's Bulldog, later on in that same paragraph that I was quoting for, eating a single kilogram of honey is as much suffering as an entire lifetime of a human spent on drudgery, and that is wildly conservative.
Well, on the plus side, I don't want to besmirch him too bad. I was going to say something snarky, which was that on the plus side, our dismissal of him being a crank is now bearing fruit. But I don't want to be that rude. So what I'll say instead is I'm disappointed in that line of reasoning. And usually when people give these kinds of calculations, so when Russ Roberts and Eric Hole were talking about effective altruism in their like shitty dismissive way, they, at least I think it was them or a similar conversation, but it was like talking about Will McCaskill, and he mentioned something like rabbits or cows, and he was like, let's imagine that they have 1/100th of the capacity or something, and they said it in like the most asinine way. It's like Will McCaskill, he thinks that he can divine how much, like how conscious a rabbit is, and can equate that to how many humans. And it's like he's not, like, to say that he's doing that like from this position of authority, like he can divine the value of it, is so disingenuous and shitty. And yet it sounds like that's what Bentham's Bulldog was actually doing. So if they want to pick on somebody, they can pick on that argument. I think usually they're done more carefully because there is some trade-off. Like I know maybe not with you, maybe you've dug your foot way back into the trenches of like, no, we will kill every other living being on Earth before it amounts to a single human life. But I think that's probably wrong-headed. Again, I don't know the number, but I also can't give you the number of like how many poor people for one, like how many poor third world people versus one first world productive person, right? I can't give you any trade-offs for human lives versus anything else. But I do think that we can follow this gradient back just to like easier fish to fry and look at like chimpanzees or something. How many of those are worth one person? It's probably not a million. It's probably way less, I would think. If only because there aren't a million chimps out there. Yeah, I don't know. So that's my long-winded way of saying I'm disappointed in that line of reasoning, and I think this is doing effective altruism damage, and maybe that's his true motive. Maybe he's a supervillain here, and he's trying to make EAs look stupid.
Oh man, he's been inside turncoat false flagger the whole time.
I mean, I don't endorse it, but that does sound fun. So
I guess, yeah.
Fun fact, that's what I'm doing with the rationalist community this whole time.
Son of a bitch.
Yep.
Well, now that we know, we'll have to drum you out.
Yeah, good luck with that. No one knows my true name or face.
Oh shit, up until this episode.
Oh man. If only I didn't run around with like my real name and on a badge. Yeah.
Picture online.
Exactly.
Yeah. The secret is those are all fake. You're actually 7 bees in a trench coat.
That's right, exactly. It's really hard to type, but we get it done.
All right, let's move on to saying our thanks to the Guild of the Rose.
Yeah, the Guild of the Rose is an online community that fosters the actual skills of rationality put into practice. It's almost exclusively online, except for the occasional in-person one run here in Denver.
When we were talking in the episode about how the rationalists have this norm of actually being able to change your mind while discussing, and it's really nice to be able to like have people like that that you can discuss things with. The Guild of the Rose is trying to help everyone get to there. They're trying to help build the rationalist skills and level up the sanity waterline for everybody out there. It's a worthy goal, in my opinion. This is like a great thing for everyone to do.
100%. And they're also succeeding at doing that if you're part of the guild. This is a community you can join for free at guildoftherose.com. And then if you want to pay to support, that's great. There are paid tiers as well, but there's no entry fee to get in and look around.
Yep.
If you don't have regular meetups or like a local community, but you like all this kind of stuff, do you think it might be beneficial to have more than just yourself to talk with about it, this is the best. And if you have friends that you enjoy talking about the stuff with, you can join it with them.
Yeah, you can keep having boring normie debates where you sink your heels in and don't ever move, or you can start having more cool rationalist debates where you update a little bit whenever you have discussion.
Yeah,
guildoftherose.org, and also link in the show notes.
that's right.
Alrighty, a couple pieces of feedback. This feedback is from Matt, who is in fact one of the founders of the Guild of the Rose, one of the co-founders.
That's right.
Good friend of the show. Matt is responding to our previous PDoom episode about how to live well with high PDoom. So this is really appropriate for this episode as well.
This will sound familiar because I stole this line of reasoning and used it in today's discussion. And didn't cite credit. So I appreciate that you're going to read it in its proper context with its full verbiage, and we're giving Matt the credit. If this sounds familiar, that's why. Matt didn't rip me off, I ripped him off.
Matt points out that you can choose to be anxious or not anxious about things by choosing how much to let yourself think about them. I'm going to jump in real quick to say I think this is one of the common problems among people who are chronically anxious. You can often see this in very online spaces where people just ruminate and spiral on things that makes them anxious over and over and over, and things get really bad to the point of like literal mental health issues. And Matt's kind of pointing out you don't got to do that.
Everyone in my family, going back at least 2 generations, well, let's say 70% of everyone going back 2 generations, has a diagnosed anxiety disorder, except for me. Like, and I don't feel very anxious. I don't feel like I've just like been dodging the diagnosis. I think that I am just generally not that anxious about things. I have other problems, don't get me wrong, but being anxious isn't one of them. And so, like, I guess I want to just emphasize that, like, choosing to be anxious about something is kind of a choice, but I think it's a little harder than just saying, like, I'm not going to think about it. Like, it does take some time with either some mindfulness practice or stoicism training to, like, get aware enough of your thoughts that to be even aware that you're anxiously ruminating on the same thing over and over, but also like deciding not to be stressed about it.
Yeah, I'm incredibly sympathetic to this because I've been fighting depression my entire life. And a lot of that is realizing when you're ruminating on depressive things and forcing yourself to not think about them. And it's hard and it's a fucking skill. But, step one is step one is knowing that you can decide just not to do that. And then step 2 is noticing when you're doing it. And then step 3 is actually changing what you're thinking about. Those are all hard steps, but if you don't accept that you can do that, you can't even get past step 1. This is a really good point that he's making here.
It is, and it's worth keeping in mind that it's a dance. It's not like a finish line.
Yeah, you do this your entire life.
Exactly. It's a constant waltz, but it's definitely worth winning every time, because then instead of having a really shitty day or whatever, you catch it 15 minutes in, give yourself another 30 seconds to process it, and then throw it out. And then you can just kind of not do it. So it's great.
He says every day you can think that there's a 1% lifetime risk of dying in a car accident, and then you're going to get really anxious whenever you drive. Or you can not think about that and choose to think about something else instead, and then you'll stop being so anxious when you're going to drive. This is the same is true about AI risk, and I think we should talk less about AI doom on this podcast for a while and move on to other topics, in large part because it has been impacting me negatively lately, and probably a lot of other people too. And I just don't want to promote that.
Yeah, this isn't the AI Doom podcast. He does respond to the charge like this is just like delusion or coping.
I mean, it's a way of coping with anxiety, but that's good. we don't need our lives to be ruined.
Yes, I was mainly pushing back against the charge of delusion. If someone's saying, "Oh, you're just kind of being a coward by not addressing it," it's like, no, I've addressed it. I've thought about it, and I've decided not to like kill myself or die trying. If I'm not going to do that, then I'm just not going to be not going to let this ruin my life. I use the analogy today: if I had a terminal illness, I could spend all day, every day counting my woes, and I could even spend the rest of my days counting my days. But that's not useful. That would not lead to the best use of my last year or something. So no, fuck all that. Put in the minimum amount of thought you have to handle it appropriately, and then no more.
With all that having been said, there is a book coming out called "If Anybody Builds It, Everyone Dies." I personally, and a lot of people that I've talked to, feel is a book that could change the political trajectory of the U.S. And is a pretty damn important book. So we're not going to keep talking about it, but at least one last time, I think we should mention right here, it helps spread how far this book can go if you pre-order it. And also maybe if you would like some extra arguments in your back pocket, if this does come up with your mom or your cousin or something, you'll have simple, concise ways to get this idea across. You will help move the Overton window. I would definitely recommend pre-ordering this book with a link in the show notes to Amazon, or go to ifanyonebuildsit.com.
Yep. I pre-ordered my copy when we plugged it last time. And if you're coming across this for the first time, or if you're not sold on the arguments yet, this is like rather than being told, go read the sequences, this is a shorter way to get the core of the information that you need to be now informed on the subject.
All right, and one last piece of user feedback. This comes from back when we were talking with Thomas Ambrose. He is the rationalist who has converted to Christianity of some kind.
Yes.
We were discussing, I don't know if this was afterwards or in the following episode, you said that looking back on it, you felt like you were too acquiescent to him, and like, because we know him and he's a great guy, and you were like too willing to accept his things, where I was pushing back a bit more. This goes in well with today's topic as well, since today's topic is debating with other humans. Zila from our Discord says, when talking with people, I am much more likely to not push back, or to not agreement, or even say I agree and think I agree when I really do not. I have noticed myself lying to myself and then saying I believe something because it was socially desirable, and it's legitimately a bit scary that my mind can do that. I think it's important to keep in mind that we are social animals, and for all of our evolutionary history, our acceptance in the tribe was what determined if we continue to live or not. It's not just that people will pretend to say things or believe things to fit in the group. Like, your brain will actually start to believe it and convince you it believes it, which when you go back later and think without, the pressure of a smiling friend next to you saying these things, you're like, wait a minute, I don't endorse that. Why did I think I did? So just a thing to keep in mind. We are very hackable creatures. We are running on corrupted hardware.
I never read, and I'm not even sure if it was published, Sam Harris's PhD work for his neuroscience degree. Wasn't there, I feel like the philosopher's name started with an S, had the claim that in the moment of understanding a claim or a sentence, you believe it for the time it takes you to understand it?
Oh, yes,
is that Spinoza? Was that Sartre?
I don't even know if that was a hypothesis. I think it may just be like, for brains to grasp a hypothetical at all, they have to briefly put in the position where they believe the hypothetical and then examine it.
And I can't remember if this was Harris's work or not, but I remember reading something along the lines of people are able to click a button saying, yes, this is true, faster than they're able to click a button saying, no, this is false.
Yeah, I remember that.
Even if
this is from the sequences.
Oh, well, there might have been some stuff since then, but maybe this was the sequences, and it's all bleeding together in my brain. So,
I mean, the sequences were citing research done somewhere else. Like, this wasn't Eliezer doing
that wasn't
these
his job,
experiments. Yeah. We read about it in the sequences. Yeah.
Oh, well, then maybe that's where I heard about it. And that's a likely candidate. Point is that it's not just you, Zila, it's everybody. You asked about, are people surprised when they come on and they're getting hardcore debated and stuff on Doom debates? I think they weren't, because the show's called Doom Debates and they know what they're signing up for. When Thomas came on the show, I wasn't pushing back, A, because I like him and I know him, but B, he wasn't coming on to sell us on this awesome new argument he came across. We asked him to share how he got to there. I wasn't about to push back on his personal journey. And I'm glad that you did, especially on the parts where it actually hit traction with reality, but all the parts that were just personal to him, I didn't want to say well, that's silly. In fact, I went well out of my way to acknowledge that I think that there's probably more than literally nothing to the idea of personal revelation. But if your personal revelation is telling you that everything you believe is false, and this thing that only you know is true, and this is not true of Thomas whatsoever, but if you have that thought, it sounds like mental illness more than anything else. Everything I believe is not true, and this thing that I just realized in my basement by myself is true, is a dark line of reasoning. And I'm not saying that's what he did, but I would say it's more likely that you've had some expired mushrooms than you've found a new truth. I'm being incoherent. I'd be curious, Zila, if there's any claims where someone says something and you're like, okay, that's just bullshit, and I will nod politely because this is someone else's party or whatever. Or if you find yourself doing it basically all the time. I find myself politely nodding along for the sake of being good company a lot, but I also find myself believing things I didn't believe an hour ago when I'm talking to somebody, and then an hour later I don't believe them either. I think I am very amiable when talking with people. I think I got all of my fight out of me during the New Atheism Wars.
Yeah.
I do like a good debate, but you brought up Buttons Bulldog. Half the reason I wanted to do that episode was because I was like, all right, let's just talk with this guy and maybe it'll be fun to debate again. And it turns out I think I suck at it. I used to be better at it, I swear. And in fact, I know I was better at it because I did it in college, in speech class and stuff, or other classes that let you give speeches.
I did notice that I just kind of let it pass when you said 1 million chimpanzees would be worth a human life. I was like, You know what? I don't need to fight about this. Let's just keep going.
I mean, yeah, sometimes it's like you're not necessarily agreeing with me.
Yeah. I'm just like, you know what? It's probably not worth the fight. And honestly, it's getting to the point where like maybe there's a case to be made for other reasons that it could be worth a human life, as opposed to the experiential badness.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it turns out that their population is somewhere between 172,000 and 299,000.
Okay, yeah. Oh, wow. So we'd have to like breed 3 times as many chimpanzees and then kill them to get to 1 million.
And I think if you met one, you would say there's no way that this is 1/1,000,000th of a human. If that's the case, Enosh, we're gonna have to like do some actual experiments where we find some children and we talk with them for 5 seconds and determine how many human lives they're worth. And we'll just keep finding younger and younger kids until you decide, you know what, we can throw all of these in the ocean. They don't matter.
I have already literally been on the record saying that humans up to 3 months old do not matter, and infanticide should be legal because they're not persons. So, I mean...
Chimps are way more sophisticated than 3-month-old humans.
You know what? This is a whole thing.
Yeah.
We would go on for a while.
We'll save it for when we're bored.
Right.
When we feel like boring you guys.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's pivot to the best part of the show.
Yes. Oh, I just saw who this is.
Yeah, all right. You can have it.
Oh, fantastic. I feel a little bit guilty feeling like extra happy to thank this person, but this is a blast from the past. Way back when the Denver Less Wrong scene was started, 10 years ago now?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 years ago. This was one of the initial members, Lyric Lee. Lyric Lee came and has not been at any of our in-person meetups for years now, but recently became a subscriber to the Bayesian Conspiracy. And gosh, it's good to see that name again. So Lyric Lee, hello. And thank you. Our shout out to our patron this week goes to Lyric Lee for supporting the show. We really appreciate it. And it's nice to see your name again.
It is. It was great to hear from you sometime last year. They'd been paying for the original, or for the meetup group to stay alive.
Oh, that's right.
For the last several years.
Yeah, and that shit is not cheap.
Yeah, I was amazed, and they quickly rebuked any offer to compensate them. You're a total badass, and thank you so much for everything you've done for our local community and you're doing for the community at large. It means a lot.
Yep. For anyone who's listening to this episode as their first episode, every episode we thank one paying supporter, patron, or Substack subscriber by name, just as an extra special show of appreciation to our supporters. So yeah, thank you everybody who listens. Thank you everyone who pays. And this week in particular, thank you to Lyric Lee.
Yeah, absolutely.
That brings us to the end of the show. Stephen, this was a good time. I'm glad we got to chat with Liron, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. I look forward to checking out more of his episodes. Remember, check out dubedebates.com.
Yes. Okay, bye.
See ya.